Hello, everybody. Welcome. Welcome for yet another evening of Mochi Storytime. And I'm being blessed by Kiki and Sora. Kiki's sniffing at my cheese. I think she wants my cheese. Can anyone tell her to step away from my cheese, please? Please step away from my cheese. Okay, step away from my cheese. Okay. Ah! Is that king of the socket? Yes, it is. Orville, you are right. You're not wrong this time. How are y'all doing this fine Monday evening? For those who are in my latitude, it's already dark outside. Assuming you're on the, the, like, East Coast. Or later. Oh boy. Yeah, East Coast or later, like, like in the middle of the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. Poor Euro. Well, how is everyone doing? Orville says he's having a good time enjoying Wicked, which I've not seen, actually, but I've heard of. Isn't it kind of like... Supposed to be kind of like Wizard of Oz, or am I thinking of something else? I seem to recall that that's... I don't know what it was. Unless I'm thinking of West Side Story. Story's supposed to be like a remake of Romeo and Juliet. I don't remember which is which. This stream is brought to you by Diet Water. As opposed to regular water. Also, Kiki has been sniffing from my teeth. Oh, so it is a version of the Wizard of Oz. That makes sense. So everyone say hi to Kiki. I grabbed her while she was trying to sniff my cheese. At my cheese cube. You put off watching this, it's almost 3 hours long? That's crazy. I guess I never thought Wizard of Oz could stretch to that long of a runtime. I mean, I know it's originally based on a novel, even so. But, so, okay, well, cheese-sniffing cats are not the reason why y'all came to watch. Y'all came here for something different. And, oh boy! What do I have for you today? Well... What indeed? Okay, this is a this is a horrible intro. What am I doing? What am I even doing? This is a horrible. Yeah, we're here for Mochi story time. We're back to reading this. Hold on. Wait, where's the... What happened to my... Did something happen to the Storytime stuff? I'm pretty sure I still had that. Image 2? Okay, no, that's not it. What the heck happened to my stuff? This is weird. Oh, wait, I know why. It's because I'm looking at the wrong scene. I'm stupoid. I am stupoid. Gosh dang. Ugh. What's wrong with me, man? What even is wrong with me?
Boo! You stink!
Okay. All right. Okay. So we have stuff. We have everything. Oh boy. Finally. I'm not calling you a liar, but you ain't calling me a truther. Well, you're not calling. You call me a lot of things. You call me a lot of things, Orville. At some point, I wouldn't be surprised if you did call me a liar and a truther in the same sentence. But anyway. All right. So last time in a final challenge, Ash about to compete in a tournament. Well, it's like a is challenging Cynthia, to a battle, and this battle would basically confer upon him the rank of master, should he prove victorious. And all of his friends and family are gathered, including his special someone. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. But in the middle of the fight, a giant freaking Rayquaza comes down from the sky and starts attacking everything. For some reason. Who can say for what reason this is? But it is a reason. There is a reason. I know the reason. But it came out of the sky for some reason. So, what does this mean? Well, everyone's trying to figure out what might have been going on, and they've come up with some theories. Professor Oak thinks it might be because of a little known game mechanic turned story point, Pokerus. And that's where we ended off things. When I said in the description, at least in the YouTube VOD, that something diseased is going on, I meant that quite literally. So, Alright, well, now that that's out of the way, we had a revelation in Chapter 10, and now for Chapter 11, it's time to see a separation. So on that note, let us begin. But first, I need to make sure that I'm actually prepared. There we go. Okay. There we go. Okay. Chapter 11, Separation. It was dawn. Somewhere outside Viridian City, bushes rustled. A Weedle looked down from a nearby tree branch curiously, and with a pop, a large blue creature burst up from the bushes, mouth wide open. Whee! Terrified, the Weedle scuttled off as fast as it could. Wah! Buffet! The creature said, its right arm touching its forehead, and looked around. Wabba! Wabba! Wab! It called. There was no answer. It looked around in panic, but couldn't see any sign of life through the undergrowth. The Wobbuffet sat down sadly. "Blah," it murmured. The bushes nearby rustled, and the Wobbuffet looked up eagerly. "Wobba?" it asked. Several Beedrill emerged, their red eyes glowing angrily at the Pokemon who had dared frighten their baby. They began to fly towards the Wobbuffet, stingers outstretched. "Wobba! Wobba!" the Wobbuffet screamed in panic, turning and running south as fast as it could, the Beedrill in hot pursuit. The trainer looked down the path, humming happily. It was another hot summer day in the open, almost too hot with the insulating green pants he wore, especially tailored for the Sinnoh region. But here, under the trees, it was quite cool, especially with the breeze and the rain clouds that could occasionally be glimpsed overhead. And the path he was on would lead him straight through Viridian Forest. After that, he decided, I'll rest at Pewter City. He heard a moan coming from from around the corner, just ahead, and he paused uncertainly. He heard it again. It didn't sound human. He began walking quickly towards it. Maybe a Pokemon was hurt and needed help. He rounded the corner and gasped. At the base of a large tree was an unconscious and badly injured Meowth. From the markings on the bark, it looked like the Meowth had somehow been run to the trunk about halfway up before sliding down to the ground. He bent to the injured Pokemon, wondering what could have propelled a Meowth into the tree at that height and speed. Maybe a Fearow caught it trying to rob its nest, he thought. Or maybe it made a Nidoking really angry somehow. Or there are a couple of wild ones around here. He reached out to touch the Pokemon, but shivered at his touch and cried out in pain. The trainer bit his lip in worry. The nearest Pokemon Center was back the way he'd come in Viridian City. But even if he ran all the way, it would still take a couple hours to get there. The Meowth was too badly hurt for him to carry if the previous reaction was any indication. He sighed. He had no choice. He was going to have to catch it. Thinking the fates that he only had 5 Pokemon on him at the moment, he took a spare Pokeball, enlarged it, and touched the Meowth with it as gently as possible. In a flash of red light, it burst inside. He watched the Pokeball intently, but it didn't even wobble once. This wasn't a trainer's lost Meowth, he thought. Might have had to leave it here for the trainer to find them by themselves then. He bit his lip again. How to get the Pokemon Center as fast as possible? "Cruz, let's go!" he shouted, throwing out a Pokeball. In a burst of light, Tyranitar emerged. "Cruz," he began, but upon seeing its trainer, the Tyranitar turned away. "Cruz, please!" he shouted. "I know that you don't like me and haven't listened to me since you evolved, but I need your help." Tyranitar yawned and then growled at the sky as the first drops of rain began. "Please, Cruz," he begged. "I just found an injured Meowth. It's hurt real bad. It needs to get to a Pokemon Center right away, but I won't be able to get there fast enough. You can move a lot faster than me. I need you to take the Pokemon back to Viridian City now!" The Tyranitar glanced at its trainer. Hate for him shone through its eyes. "I know you hate the rain, but if you don't do it, the Meowth could die. Please, Cruz, do this one thing for me. I promise I'll never ask you to do anything again if you'll just help me this one time." The Tyranitar gave an inward groan, hating itself for listening to its trainer, but knowing that it was the only one who could help save the injured Pokemon's life, what choice did it have? It closed its eyes and gave an abrupt nod. "Thank you," the trainer whispered, pressing the Pokeball into the Tyranitar's hand. Sparing time only to give a contemptuous look to its trainer, the Tyranitar stomped off as fast as it could among the trees. The trainer gave a huge sigh of regret as he watched the Tyranitar leave. "What did I do wrong that made you hate me so much?" he whispered. Oh boy. So this is not an original character, just so y'all know. This is, well, I'm not gonna say who it is, because, you know, that reveal is not gonna come until later. But interesting, isn't it? Doesn't this, remind anyone of anything? From a certain season 1? Where have we seen this? Where have we seen this behavior before, I wonder? I mean, is that really relevant to the Fingers Kingdom? I don't know. I'm just making comments here. But yeah, An injured Meowth in the forest. Oof. Good thing he was there in time. And I do like how they brought in the the little stipulation that if it was already someone else's Pokemon, you wouldn't have been able to capture it with just a stock Pokeball. So, that was a nice little thing. Okay, but off we continue. Actually, first I do want to see. Okay, 20. All right, off we continue. Groaning, the man dangled painfully from the tree branch. He put a hand to his blue hair, wincing at the size of the bump on his head. He looked at the ground and was surprised to see how high up he was. He sighed and began searching for a branch within his reach so that he could climb down. He found one almost instantly, just below him. He tried to wriggle off the branch, but found that he couldn't move. Panicking, he tried to move in the opposite direction, but with no success. He realized that his right arm felt unusually heavy. He turned to see why and groaned. His arm was jammed between several tightly knit branches, leaving him stuck in this tree unless he was able to free himself. He began to slowly try and maneuver his arm out, wincing every time it came jammed between the branches. Air? He heard a voice croak. Looking up from his arm, he started to suddenly see a young Fearow pop its neck out from behind the branches. Hello, he said with a weak grin. Two more baby Fearow raised their necks to look at him. Realization dropped. The branches were in that shape naturally. They had been woven. His arm had crushed through a Fearow's nest. A shadow wheeled over him, and he gulped as he felt rather than saw several long claws ruffled through his hair. The angry mother landed next to him, hissing menacingly at his close proximity to her chicks. A slightly smaller male landed next to his mate, a hard glint of rage in his eyes. The man stared at them both in fear. The two furious parents let out a simultaneous screech of anger and lunged at the man, their beaks glowing as they launched into a combined drill peck. A powerful electric attack crashed upwards, so close that the man felt his eyebrows begin to crackle from the sheer intensity. It smashed directly into the two Fearow, and both the mother and the father wheeled upwards towards the rain-soaked clouds that soared overhead, trying to escape the attack. The man gave a sigh of relief and looked downwards. A dark-haired trainer and his Electivire stood on the path. The trainer had a bored expression on his face as he watched the two Fearow circle far overhead. Thank you, the man called down gratefully. For what? The trainer answered, a mischievous note in his voice. I was trying to capture those Fearow, not save you. Oh. Well, do you think you can help me get down before these Fearow come back? He asked. Why? Scared to climb down? The trainer asked, condescension on his face. No, my arm's stuck inside the Fearow's nest. That's why they attacked me, the man explained. The trainer gazed upwards and gave a sideways nod to his Electivire. The Pokemon leapt into the tree, and as the rain began, scaling it rapidly. Break the nest, the trainer said, sounding bored again. The man gasped. But there are young Fearow in there! They couldn't get hurt! He protested. I don't care about the babies. All I care about is catching one of the adults, the trainer said with a snort. Do it, Electivire. The Electivire raised an arm, white tendrils covering its fur. In one swift motion, it brought the arm downwards, smashing through the side of the nest, freeing the man's arm and sending the three young Fearow plummeting earthwards, squawking in alarm. Without thinking, the man slid over the edge of the branch, arms outstretched. Two of the Fearow flapped their little wings as hard as they could, managing to gain enough lift to steer themselves towards the branch that they grasped onto with all their might. Paralyzed with fear, the third Fearow plummeted to the ground, shrieking. Falling just behind it, the man reached out and managed to grab the Fearow by its wingtip. He swung it upwards, burying the burn in his chest right before he crashed to the ground shoulder first, sending up a spray of mud. Pathetic, the trainer muttered, motioning his Electivire to jump down before walking off. I'll never catch those Fearow now. The man groaned and struggled to his knees. His shoulder ached abominably, and he was sore all over, but it didn't feel like any bones were broken. He was silently grateful for the rain. The mud had softened his fall enough to avoid serious damage. Hey? Little Fearow asked him, hopping close and tilting its neck inquisitively. I'll be okay, the man assured him, massaging his shoulder gently. I've been in a lot of falls worse than that before. He looked up to where the nest had once been and winced regretfully. I'm sorry that your home was destroyed. I didn't want that to happen, he said softly. Still, at least you're okay. He gave the young Firo a weak smile and then realized that the trainer was some distance down the path. Hey, wait! He called, scrambling to his feet and running after the trainer. What now? The trainer asked, turning with an annoyed look on his face. Can you tell me where I am and how to get to the nearest city? The man asked. The trainer snorted. You mean you don't even know where you are? Not as such, no. When you get blasted off by a Rayquaza's Hyper Beam, you don't really have time to plan out your route. Huh. So you were at the match between Cynthia and that weakling Ash, were you? The trainer assumed. Without waiting for an answer, he continued. You're in a forest that's west of Viridian City. To get there, you need to go that direction. He pointed the way to Thank you. But don't you think that's kind of harsh calling the twerp a weakling? He's just fighting to become a master. I've beaten him so many times, the trainer muttered, anger pooling out of his eyes. He'll always be weak until he learns that the only strong Pokemon is one that knows a powerful attack when it's caught. The man hesitated for a moment and then held out his hand. My name's... I know who you are, James, the trainer said, sticking his hand in his pockets. Now, if you excuse me, I have to go and meet my father at Tojo Falls. He said that there's something he needs me to do. He turned and took a few steps down the path before stopping and glancing back, a calculating look at his narrowed eyes. He recalled hearing something about James recently. Want to come with me? He asked. Things started. Yeah, but Tojo Falls isn't on the way to Viridian, he began. You'll like my father, the trainer said. I should really just try to find my friends at the nearest Pokemon Center, James argued. I'll make sure my father gives you a 5-course meal made by the greatest chefs in Kanto, the trainer said with a smirk. James gulped. Right on cue, his stomach rumbled. 5 courses? He asked. The trainer shrugged. Make it 6 if you like, he said. Well, would you put it like that? My name's Paul, the trainer said. If you're going to come with me, just try and keep up. Abruptly, he turned and began to walk down the path, his hands still buried in his pockets. James stood there, slightly stunned at the sudden change from indifference to warmth to downright contempt. He sighed and felt a sudden weight on his shoulders as the young hero landed on it. It would be difficult to stay on his good side, he muttered, as much to the hero as to himself. To his surprise, the hero reached down and picked a Pokeball on his belt. The Pokeball absorbed the hero, rolled once, and then clanked still. James looked at the Pokeball in disbelief, but felt a warm feeling growing inside. At least he wouldn't be traveling with Paul alone. Yeah, so Paul's here too. Yeah, he's here. He's here. Not that I know if I would say everyone is here, but he's here. I do have to say I haven't actually watched a whole lot of Diamond and Pearl, but I do know how much of a butthead Paul is, so I mean, you know. I feel like that's all I really need to know, honestly. But, you know, I don't know. Maybe I'm too hard on him. But then again, maybe not. I don't know. You be the judge. Moving on. I thought Professor Namba said they were in Viridian City, Butch complained to Cassidy. They were when he told us that a week ago, she said, reclining comfortably on the sofa. Who knows where they've gone to now? Probably still following that kid and his Pikachu, Butch muttered. Cassidy overheard him. Hey, that's not a bad idea, he said. He was in that match with Cynthia, right? I'm guessing he's probably gone back to his town for a little while until all the interest dies. Maybe they'll be there too. Yeah, maybe. Butch acquiesced. He looked unhappily around the hotel room. It was a luxurious suite that had a balcony, a fireplace, a 50-inch plasma TV. Remember those? And furniture made of the softest leather. It even had 2 single beds, and the whole room was being paid for by the organization. He hated it. He hated the room, hated the situation, feared the future. Just before they had left for Viridian City, Giovanni had made a surprise appearance. He'd reiterated that he wanted Jesse, James, and Meowth dead, and he promised them that if they didn't do it, they'd be taking their places. Butch growled in his frustration. No matter what happened, he'd end up being either dead or a murderer. He stood and walked towards the door. "Where are you going?" Cassidy asked without too much interest. "I need fresh air," he muttered, stalked out of the room. "We have a balcony," she pointed out, but he was already gone. Butch left the hotel and walked down the street slowly. He didn't notice the darkening sky, and didn't pay any attention to where he was going, and just let his feet lead the way. He hunched over every time he passed someone, wishing he'd put on another shirt. The large red R on his black vest almost instantly identified him as a member of Team Rocket. Unable to bear the stares people gave him any longer, he turned off into an alleyway, took off his shirt, and flipped it inside out. "It may look bad, but at least people won't be going out of the way to avoid me," he thought dully. He put his shirt back on and continued to walk down the alley, emerging into a small park. He wandered aimlessly around until he saw a free set of swings. Sitting down on the centermost one, he began to kick back and forth, moving forwards and back slowly, barely aware of the black clouds that raced overhead. He began to think about his life and all the decisions he had made that ended up putting him in this situation. How did it end up being like this? What decision did I ever make that would force me to either kill or be killed? What can I do? These questions raced around in his mind over and over again. Despite being a part of Team Rocket and all the evil things he had done for the organization, he didn't consider himself a bad person. He'd been a street kid when the Queers came around. He had no real future away from the gangs, and by being part of Team Rocket, he could get salary and his very own Pokemon. He sighed and shook his head as the rain began. No matter how many times he looked through his life, he never saw anything that he could have done differently. It seemed that he had always been destined to be a killer. Oh, more introspection here. It seems like we're getting a lot of Team Rocket in this chapter, huh? How about that? What could this mean? I mean, well, I won't tell you, but the story will. Anyway. Jesse awoke in the bushes when a heavy gust of wind caused several nearby pine cones to rise from the ground and pelt her in the forehead. She moaned and put a hand to her bruised head. She could feel a massive headache going on, and suspected that the pine cones would only make it worse. "What a day," she groaned. "First we try to sell refreshments at the Torp Smash to make a little cash and pay back our debt, but nobody will buy anything. Then that Rayquaza appears and blasts us all away, and now it looks like it's going to start raining," she grumbled as the first few drops lighted on her head. "Yeah, do something," she whined. "Need a blanket so I don't get wet." She waited for the usual snarky response, and her eyes snapped open when it didn't come. She looked around, but she was all alone. "Meowth?" she called, a note of panic in her voice. "James, answer me!" Her only reply was another strong gust of wind. Brilliant. "Looks like I've only got Wobbuffet for company." She closed her eyes, waiting for the customary self-release. "Wobbuffet?" she asked sharply. Her eyes opened as she looked for the right Pokeball on her belt. Finally finding it, she called Wobbuffet out, but it all just bounced squelchily on the rapidly dampening path. She closed her eyes in horror, calling that Wobbuffet had been selling snacks with them. "Wobbuffet!" she screamed. "Wobbuffet, where are you?" "Need some help?" Her voice asked. She opened her eyes and saw a green-haired coordinator in a loose purple jacket. "Oh no," she groaned, closing her eyes again. "Not you!" The coordinator looked surprised at her reaction and bent closer. "Jesse!" he said in surprise. "I didn't recognize you under all that mud." "Thanks, Twerp," she muttered. "Are you gonna help me out of this bush or what?" "On 2 conditions. Those being, you don't try to steal any of my Pokemon," he stated. She looked at him indignantly. "I don't want you Pokemon. You can have them. The only Pokemon I want to steal is that Pikachu." "Number 2, he continued, You stop calling me twerp and call me by my name instead. She rolled her eyes. Fine, Drew, she said. Now, if you'd please help me up. Drew grabbed her by the arm and heaved her out of the bush. She stumbled as she caught her footing before turning to face the coordinator. Thanks, twerp. She caught herself this time. Thanks, Drew, she amended. He gave her a quick grin. No problem. You'll need a little help sometime. A lightning strike flashed, illuminating the area more vividly as the rain began to fall down hard. Follow me, Drew shouted, motioning into the wood. Where are we going? Jesse asked as they both began to run to try and escape the rain. I just found a cave and was about to go inside for shelter when I heard you calling, Drew answered. I didn't hear what you were saying, so I decided to check it out in case you needed help. He pushed her branch aside and ran across a small clearing before reaching the cave, Jesse close behind. She flopped down gratefully on the dry rock and watched as Drew kindled a fire. So, why are you out here in Kanto? She asked. Although it was dark, she could still see him flush. I came to see a friend, he said carefully. I think she's nearby in Pallet Town. Jessie nodded knowingly. She's nearby, she teased. Drew flushed again, but the tenseness and raw emotion of rejection he had carried inside for years compelled him to speak out. When I went to Johto and she came to, I was happy. I thought she'd finally gotten shot of that Ketchum kid and her nerdy little brother and wanted to travel everywhere with me instead. He sighed. How wrong was I? I actually did travel with her for a little ways, from Goldenrod City to Ecruteak City. I thought she'd come to Johto because she wanted to be with me, but she didn't. When I told her how I felt about her, she kind of nodded in understanding and just carried on as usual. That must have hurt, Jessie commented. It did, and still does. I tried to get closer to her, but I pushed her too far. I woke up one morning and she'd gone on without me. She didn't even leave me a note telling me where she'd gone. Next time I saw her was at the Grand Festival. I told her then that I was going to go to Sinnoh for the Super Contests. I was sure that she'd follow me there, but as soon as I left for Sinnoh, she headed to Freyan instead. I've been looking for her ever since. Jessie shook her head. So now you finally tracked her to Pallet Town? She asked. Drew nodded. I'd just arrived in Kanto for a trip to Saffron City when I heard about a trainer trying to become a master by beating Cynthia. I decided to watch it on TV, thinking that the trainer must be pretty good for the match to be an international broadcast. Sure didn't expect to catch him. I figured that since they were friends, May would be there cheering for him, so I decided not to go to Saffron after all, but head to Pallet Town instead, since that's where Ash is from, and I figured that he'd celebrate there. Do you think you can win her heart? Jessie asked him. She is pretty close to that twerp, and I've always thought they had something going on. Drew flushed angrily. Oh, I'll get her all right, he muttered. She's like putty when she's given a rose. Plus, it's been so long since she's seen me that she's sure to realize how much she's missed me when she does. I just happened to be going to Pallet Town too, Jessie informed him, but Drew didn't seem to hear. Watch out, May, he murmured, a fanatical light in his eyes. Your dream boy's coming. Yeah, this again, huh? Well, remember, this is a different timeline from the Maze Crush timeline. In fact, you could say it's an extremely different timeline. It's extremely different, but also similar in a few ways. But no, bear in mind this timeline has diverged. This timeline probably has diverged greatly. I mean, it probably diverged at a probably even earlier point than where you'd think, because the Maze Crush timeline diverges after like a certain point in the anime from when they're like doing the Battle Frontier stuff, and then towards the end of it, basically May choosing to stay with Ash is kind of like where the timeline just kind of diverged completely. But in that story, remember that the Frontier Brains had something going on with Giovanni, and Team Rocket, and that's how like the whole Sevi Islands thing was going on there. So that would have had to been the primary difference in this timeline. So my headcanon here is that the timeline that this story takes place in is when there's like a okay. So May's crush wouldn't have happened in the way that it did if Scott weren't like flat broke, right? If the Battle Frontier were actually profitable, he wouldn't have had to take a loan out. And I think that's where this I think that's the primary difference, actually. I think that's the primary diversion point in this timeline. That the Battle Frontier just was not profitable, and Scott had to take out a loan. In this timeline, I think it's at least the Battle Frontier is at least above water. So yeah. So Team Rocket's not doing anything in the Sevii Islands here. Why am I considering these as part of like some of like the same canon? Well, I mean, they're both Pokemon fanfics. I mean, if you think about it, if fanfics are trying to be canon compliant in a lot of ways, there's like one major difference that kind of makes them diverge in the timeline, right? So, I mean, I just like trying to come up with like things to try to reconcile these differences, you know what I mean? Because, you know, like but for want of a nail, you know what I mean? Something else would have happened. So I guess the lesson of the story is your future can change greatly if you have enough money to do the things you want to do. And if you don't have so little money that you have to get it from a crime syndicate. Yes, I know that's kind of a fantastic ASIP, but, you know, I don't know. It's an ASIP nonetheless. All right. Well, anyway, that is the end of Chapter 11. So it was about 25 minutes, maybe? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's about 25 minutes. Okay. All right, so this next one is... Okay, this next one's going to be pretty dang short. This won't take quite as long. There's quite a lot in the last chapter, what with, you know, like I was trying to catch up with Team Rocket, you know, the Team Rocket trio. And also, Paul and Drew are here too, so, I mean, is this the part where I need to start playing, like, you're probably playing, like, start playing Lifelight from Smash Ultimate? Because everyone's here, and yet not everyone is here yet. So, I don't know. Okay. Alrighty. Chapter. Okay. Alright, so that is chapter 11. Now, chapter 12, Infection. Professor Oak, please tell us what you think, Brock said. The professor turned back slowly and uttered one word. Pokerus. Ash stared at the professor in confusion. He wasn't alone. Misty, May, Max, Delia, Norman, and Carolyn were also looking puzzled. Gary, Tracy, and Brock all gave a sharp intake of breath. Of course. Pokerus, Gary murmured. What's a Pokerus? May asked. Pokerus is short for Pokemon virus, Professor Oak explained. I began researching it just after you went to Hoenn, Ash. Even though I've been researching it for about 6 years, I still don't know how much about it. Why not? Dawn asked, making everybody jump. Nobody had noticed her coming down the stairs. 6 years is a long time to be researching and still not know a whole lot. Gary came to the professor's defense. The trouble is that Pokerus is dangerous for the Pokemon, he said. When a Pokemon is infected, it makes them grow at an accelerated rate. That will still happen after the infection fades, in fact, so that side effect is very useful for training. The infection itself only lasts for 24 hours, but the Poke Rush is very contagious. It can't be spread to humans, but every Pokemon has the potential to contract it. I still don't see why it's so dangerous, Dawn said. You said it's a good thing for the Pokemon, and if it's contagious, that can only help all the trainers' Pokemon grow quickly, right? Professor Oak shook his head. It's only the side effect of the Pokerus that has ever been useful, he said. The problem with Pokerus is that it hurts the infected Pokemon. It makes them feral for the 24 hours they are infected, and therefore exceedingly dangerous to anything that moves, person or Pokemon, although it seems as if it will always attack the Pokemon first. You were there when the Rayquaza destroyed the Colosseum 2 days ago, Dawn. It was completely unprovoked and primarily directed at the Pokemon on the field. From what Tracy had said, it seems as if a similar thing had happened at the lab. Rayquaza was attacking the Pokemon, not the lab itself. Good night, UB! Thank you for popping in as always. Hope you have a good rest of your night. So, when a Pokemon is infected, it basically loses its mind and goes crazy until the disease wears off? Dawn asked, beginning to understand. That's it in a nutshell, Professor Oak answered. And that's why we still know very little about it. You see, it's very dangerous to examine an infected Pokemon, and it's even more dangerous to deliberately infect a Pokemon with it. Some Pokemon that have weak immune systems aren't able to fight off in time and die. But why would a Rayquaza have caught the disease? Misty asked. It usually is up in the ozone layer, and there aren't any other Pokemon I know of that live up that high up. The Pokerus isn't actually a disease, Gary answered. We may not know much about it, but one thing we do know is that the actual Pokerus is a type of microorganism that attaches to a Pokemon. The infection dies when the microorganisms do, although the side effects can last for years. We don't have a clue where it comes from either. For all we know, it could come from space. So, once the Rayquaza was infected by the disease, Ash said, thinking over the likely sequence of events that they had outlined, it just attacked the first Pokemon that it saw, which happened to be a Moltres, and of course, a Moltres is a legendary Pokemon too. It wouldn't just be knocked out from an attack, it would be able to fight back. That's exactly what must have happened, Tracy said. When the Rayquaza attacked the Moltres, it retaliated. It managed to land a powerful hit on the Rayquaza's arm. That attack drove it off and just made it even more enraged than it already was. So it attacked the Pokemon at the lab and the Colosseum with even more power. That makes sense, May said. But the infection will have worn off by now, won't it? Just then, Latias gave a high keening shriek of pain. She collapsed to the floor, reverted into her natural form, shuddering uncontrollably. Latias? Latias! Ash shouted, knocking his chair over in his hurry to get to her side. Get all the Pokemon outside! Professor Oak shouted, grabbing a surprised Pikachu by the tail and dragging it away from Latias. Now! Why? Max asked. Just do it! Oak shouted. Pokeballs included. It'd be transmitted directly through those. Uh-huh! Max asked, more confused than ever. Gary grabbed him and pulled him back. Do as the professor says! He snapped. See that growth above her eyes? Pointed out a small lumpy pustule, nauseating gray-green in color. She's contracted the Pokerus. How? Misty asked, wide-eyed at the sight of Latias stretching out on the floor in pain. Get your Pokemon and Pokeballs outside! Professor Oak roared. Yeah, okay, so yeah, when Professor Oak's screaming, you know something ain't right here. Just listen to him. Listen to the expert, y'all. Just listen to the experts when they say something is going wrong. Like, honestly. Pikachu whispered, looking inside through the window with drooping ears. Every single Pokemon had been released from their Pokeballs while Brock sterilized them to make sure that the Pokerus couldn't affect them through the Pokeballs. They were all in the backyard, wondering just what was going on. So were Mystery, Max, Delia, Dawn, Norman, and Carolyn. Ash, May, Brock, Professor Oak, and Gary were the only ones in the house with Latias. Now they were all waiting for news on Latias's condition. At last, Gary appeared at the back door. Gramps wanted to apologize for shouting, but he's a little busy, so I'm here to do it for him, he said. You should probably know why he was so anxious to get every Pokemon outside, too. You see, the Pokevirus is extremely contagious. You wouldn't believe how quickly it can be transmitted. How could Latias have caught it? Norman asked. Was it from the battle against the Rayquaza? No, it's normally only transmitted through direct physical contact, Gary said. Rayquaza didn't touch Latias or any of the Pokemon used to battle it. We don't know how she caught it, but I'm sure that Gramps is a theory. A game theory! Thanks for watching. Anyway. What was the rush with getting all the Pokeballs outside if it's only contagious through contact? Don asked, a little indignantly. I said it's normally transmitted that way, Gary corrected her. Pokerust can leave an infected host, but it dies very quickly if it does. It's something to do with the blood it's absorbed, I think. Pokerust that hasn't infected a Pokemon can survive freely until it finds a host. From what the professor and I know, the furthest the Pokerust can go after it has infected a host is 5 feet away. If there are any Pokemon or Pokeballs within that radius, they can be infected. That's why we had to get you all out, and why the Pokeballs are all being sterilized. Ash crouched down near Latias, worry shining through his eyes as he gazed at her outstretched form. Here, Nate said, squatting next to him. I found a blanket to keep her warm. She spread the blanket on top of Latias, and at May's touch, Latias' eyes opened. She began thrashing around, hissing angrily. A nasty gleam came into her eyes and she lunged, trying to bite the coordinator. Look out! Professor Oak shouted as he dragged a shocked May back in time. Latias' snapping jaws closed shut inches from her arm. Latias, calm down! Ash urged, throwing himself in front of the legendary and wrapping his arms around her neck to try to restrain her. Ash, get away from her! May screamed. Ash held on grimly to the enraged Pokemon as it thrashed on the floor, trying to shake her attacker off. She managed to twist her neck towards Ash, rage gleaming in her eyes as she looked at him and prepared to strike. Latias, take it easy, he said soothingly. Inexplicably, the fight went out of her as she locked eyes with Ash. The gleam in her eyes vanished, and she slowly lowered her head. Ash felt the tenseness leave her neck. To his great surprise, she laid her head in his lap, keeping one eye focused on his face. The professor gaped. That was unexpected, he said. Ash, how did you manage to get her to calm down like that? I've never seen anything like it in my life. Ash shrugged, carefully keeping his face turned to Latias. For some reason, I've always had this strange kind of connection to legendaries, he said. I don't know why, but they seem to trust me. On my travels, I've ridden a Lugia, befriended Mewtwo, saved lives of a Mew and a Celebi, rescued a Manaphy from a pirate, and even managed to convince a Suicune to purify a polluted lake. Professor Oak shook his head in disbelief, but looked at Ash with a mixture of respect and awe. He took a tentative step forwards, but Latias swiveled her head and began hissing menacingly. Professor, I think you and May should both go outside, Ash said, taking hold of Latias' head again, calming her down. It looks like I'm the only one who can get near her right now, and you two can get hurt if she come any closer. Professor Oak shook his head. I'm not going anywhere, Ash, he said. You might need me later. Besides, if I stay around long enough without being threatening, she should acclimatize. I'm not leaving either, May added. She may have tried to attack me, but I know she's not in her right mind. If I can help her, I will. Ash shrugged. It's your choice. Don't try to get too close to her, though. Professor Oak pulled out a chair from the table, trying to think of a way to change the subject from Latias' infection. I just realized I played the wrong song in the last scene. Gosh dang it. This is why you pay attention to your sticky notes, fellas. Tell me, Ash, he said. Have you thought about where you're going next? Well, I was going to stay at the Coliseum as Frontier Brain, he sighed. Can't do that now that's been destroyed. Dawn said that she was going to go back to Sinnoh for a while to visit Joanna and tour around the region. She hasn't been back since she competed in the Sinnoh Grand Festival, and I think she wanted to enter a couple more contests there for fun. I've been thinking about going with her. I want to see how the region's coping now that Team Galactic has disbanded, and it'll be great to see Nando again. Latias gave a shudder and stroked her gently. You could probably battle the gyms, too, Professor Oak said. I'm sure they'd all love to be challenged by you, and there are other gyms that you haven't been to yet. Each region generally has at least 16 gyms, and some of them aren't visited very often because they're so far out of the usual way. I know of some leaders who are just dying for an opponent. That sounds great, Ash said happily. I'd love to battle all the other gyms. Make the journey a lot more interesting than just visiting Twinleaf Town and coming back to Kanto. Ash? She asked, her cheeks... May asked, her cheeks suddenly feeling a little warm. Do you think it would be okay if I came along too? I've never been to Sinnoh, and I'd like to... That would be great! Ash said, beaming. I'd love it if you come with us, May. She went pink at the sight of a smile and turned away quickly. Why did suddenly feel warm and kind of faint? She wondered silently. She thought about how happy he seemed to be at the idea of traveling with her again, and her stomach gave an unexpected jolt. Of course, she thought early. I'm just hungry. Yeah, now you can see that this is that was Memories was the song supposed to be played for this scene. This song was supposed to be playing for the scene before that. You know, this one that doesn't sound, you know, all like, you know, warm and fuzzy and emotional. You know, it's a song that plays when you're in one of the escape rooms in Virtue's Last Reward. You know, it's a lot more grim and stuff. Anyway, yeah, infection. So yeah, Poke Rust is a thing. Even more of a thing now, and Latias has it. Oh noes, what are we gonna do? Maybe our laundry? I don't know. Can I have some change? Alright, well anyway, so that was chapter 12. Now, chapter 13, Understanding. She was in pain. So much pain. It seemed like it was her whole world. It was all she could remember. Her vision was dark, almost non-existent. Occasionally, a misty, indistinct figure would appear and then back away. She bared her teeth at the blurry gray apparitions, trying to fend off any more onslaughts. A fresh lance of pain skewered down her back, and she trembled, crying out. It was all she knew. Her head hurt abominably. There was a horrible biting sensation, and she could feel herself being absorbed. She knew instinctively that the pain had begun there. Now it coursed throughout her entire body, leaving her trembling on the ground, exhausted, in agony. She could hear noise. It sounded strange and yet familiar. It had a steady rhythm to it. She felt exceedingly weak, but she managed to turn her head towards the source. It was another of those apparitions that occasionally lunged for her. This one seemed different, though. There were two auburn eyes in this apparition that radiated calm and protection. She felt slightly safer looking at them, and the pain was a little less too. She focused her eyes on those orbs, not willing to turn away. Another lance shot through her as she trembled, but she kept her gaze on the calming influence of the apparition. So much pain. So much. Latias opened her eyes. Her vision was hazy, but the agony she had been in for so long was finally beginning to fade. She trembled as she tried to stand up, but she was too weak. She collapsed heavily, moaning softly. She felt sure that her world was ending. All she knew was pain. Surely if the pain died, she would too. But no, she could remember beyond the pain now. She remembered the delicious smell of breakfast as she came skipping down the stairs. She remembered the warm embrace of the person she had begun to consider as her trainer as he reunited with her. She remembered flying through the open skies with her brother, her heart filled with happiness. She turned her head slowly, looking back in the direction of the apparition that had comforted her so much. It was gone. In its place was the trainer, hunched over in sleep, although his arms encircled her neck protectively, comfortably. A spasm racked her, and she gave a low, flute-like call of pain. She heard footsteps coming from behind her, and she turned her head. Although her vision was still blurry and unfocused in the light dark, she recognized the female as being one of her tormentors by her shape. As she drew closer and became more distinct, though, Latias began to recognize her. Her hair swung softly from side to side as she approached slowly, a bowl of water in her hand. Latias could sense her nervousness and knew that it was because she had tried to attack her the night before. She knew that this girl was a friend, though. She remembered being held back by her when she almost fell over the edge of the Colosseum's railing. The girl was very near her when another painful spasm racked her body. The girl backed off swiftly, fear in her eyes. Latias almost cried in desperation. She was devastatingly thirsty. She tried to rise again, but collapsed once more. Her vision began to flicker, and she knew that she was about to pass out from dehydration. And then suddenly, the girl was next to her. Latias could still sense fear, but was glad that she was doing her best to keep it contained. She felt the trainer's grip on her neck broken gently, and then the soft touch of the girl as she maneuvered her head and neck towards the bowl of water. Latias drank the water as quickly as she dared, feeling her irritated throat becoming soothed by the liquid. When the water was all gone, Latias gave the girl a flute-like call of thanks, and then lay her head in the girl's lap. She felt the girl tense when a spasm shook her frame, but at last she seemed to realize that it was an involuntary movement, and that Latias had absolutely no desire to attack her. The girl began to speak, although in Latias' exhausted state she barely understood what was being said. The tone was soothing and relaxing, though, and Latias felt her eyes closing in sleep. Ash awoke, feeling very stiff. He yawned slightly as he turned his head towards the window and saw sunlight beginning to filter in. He looked down towards Latias and was surprised to see that her eyes were no longer fixed on him. Instead, they were closed in slumber, her head on someone else's lap. He turned and was surprised to see May sitting next to him, her eyes shut tightly in deep sleep. Her head was resting lightly on his shoulder, and her bangs covered her eyes. Oblivious to what had transpired before sunrise, he wondered briefly why Latias and May were sleeping in those positions. He watched May sleeping for a few more moments. He was feeling ravenous, but he didn't want to accidentally wake May up by taking away her pillow. Her mouth moved slightly, and she gave a little sigh in her sleep. To Ash's immense surprise and slight discomfort, she snuggled into his shoulder, a little more securely. Her arms shifted slightly until they encircled his neck. Still asleep, May gave another small sigh of comfort and turned her head so that her cheek was pressed against his shoulder more comfortably. Ash felt his cheeks redden uncontrollably, and a curiously warm sensation began to glow in his heart. He heard a noise and jerked his head towards the window, sincerely hoping that neither Max nor Norman were looking in. To his immense relief, the only one at the window was a sleeping Pikachu. He turned his head towards the table and saw Professor Oak sprawled across two chairs, his head lolling as he snored. He turned his attention back to May. Hesitantly, he put his arm around May's shoulder, holding her to him more securely. She gave another little sigh, and Ash felt the feeling flare up inside of him again. His eyes widened as he suddenly recognized what the feeling was. He tried to fight it for a moment, hoping that he was wrong, but to no avail. He sighed and leaned his head over until it rested gently on May's. Oh boy! Oh boy! Oh boy! A sudden silent tap on the shoulder startled Ash. He swiveled his head around so fast that he cricked his neck. He began to rub away the sudden pain and saw Brock cringing slightly at the unexpected response. Ash patted the ground on his other side, and Brock sat down quietly. "You're looking pretty comfortable, Ash," he whispered. Ash just let out a quiet groan. I fell asleep last night with Latias in my lap, he said. I wake up and Latias is in May's lap with May leaning on my shoulder. Not exactly what I expected to see. At least you didn't push her off, Brock said with a shrug. Ash just sighed and looked back at the window. They sat in silence for a while, watching the sunlight grow more intense. Far off in the distance, they heard the Pallet Town Dodrio let out several long and quavering cries, indicating that it had just turned 7 o'clock. I've actually been expecting this for quite a while, Brock said. Expecting what? Ash asked, confused. Brock waved towards May, still sleeping on Ash's shoulder, and Ash's arm wrapped around her. How many times have you heard Professor Oak, Professor Birch, and Gary say that a Pokemon usually takes after its trainer? Brock asked. More times than I can remember. Why? Have you ever noticed how close your Pokemon and May tend to be? He asked. Ash shrugged. Not really, he said. I know that both of our Bulbasaur are pretty close, but most of the time it just reminds me of our friendship. Brock sighed. This is going to be more difficult than he expected. You may not have known this, Ash, but most of your Pokemon are male, and most of May's Pokemon are female. So? Ash asked, not really seeing where this is going. Brock sighed again, but resolved to struggle on until he made some kind of sense with Ash. You can often tell how a trainer feels just by observing the Pokemon, he said. Both of your Bulbasaur, both of your Squirtle, your Snorlax and May's Munchlax, as well as Pikachu and May's Eevee have indescribably close bonds. Bonds that go beyond friendship. Now Ash began to see where this was going and felt himself grow warm. Brock opened his mouth to speak again, but Ash forestalled him by holding up his hand. I think you're right, Brock, he said at last. May and I haven't really seen each other since I completed the Battle Frontier. We've managed to keep in contact through the video phones, though. For a little while now, I've started to feel a little strange about her. When I look at her, I feel a tightening in my chest. Brock, I think that I like her more than a friend. Brock was surprised. He hadn't expected Ash cotton on so quickly. Then he smiled and leaned back slightly. Like I said, I've been expecting it for a while, he said. Not just on your end, either. He watched Ash work this out, and grinned slightly at the look that emerged on Ash's face. Ash opened his mouth to speak, but with a weak quaver from Latias attracted his complete attention. She had woken up and was looking at Ash beatingly with her red-rimmed eyes. Ash felt May stir on his shoulder, and he quickly retracted his arm. She yawned and opened her eyes slowly. In one swift motion, she jerked her head off his shoulder, whipped her arms away from his neck, and scuttled backwards. Her face was beet red as she looked at Ash and realized that he was awake. Morning, May, he said cheerily, hoping his real emotions were hidden enough. Good thing you woke up when you did. I think Latias is a little hungry and tired. I didn't want to accidentally wake you, though. Must have been up really late to just fall asleep like that without getting a proper pillow. May gaped at him for a moment, her tired just preventing her from comprehending his meaning. Then she realized that he was covering for her to allow her to keep a little dignity at her surprise upon awakening. Yeah, I was up real late, she said slightly fast. Then she gave a little nervous laugh. Guess I'll get Latias some water since she's so thirsty. She scuttled out of sight into the kitchen, her face still a little pink. Ash shook his head and grinned a little. Unbeknownst to him, a blue-eyed girl peeking in at the window had seen it all. She gave a huge grin and thumbs up to Brock. He smiled and returned the gesture. They had both been right. Oh, they're the best wing people ever, aren't they? Aren't they the best wing people ever? Ah! I'm telling you, man. I'm telling you. I'm telling you. Brock and Don, best homies ever. Aren't they? Gosh. Ah. Gosh. But yeah, so, well, they do have something going on here, don't they? Sorry, I like the ship, okay? I mean, you already knew I like the ship, but come on. Come on, man. Come on. Latias was cured. She was very tired and felt extremely weak, but everyone was rejoicing that she'd managed to fight off the Poké Russ, although Ash was still at her side and making sure that she was comfortable. So, Ash, you're coming back to Sinnoh with me, huh? Dawn asked. Ash nodded from his position next to Latias on the floor. Seeing that she had fallen asleep, he stood up and walked over to the table for some breakfast. Yeah, it's been a while since I was last there, and Professor Oaks told me that there are other gyms in the region that I don't know about before. How cool would that be to win one of every badge in a region? Sounds pretty cool to me, Dawn said. Of course, I just want to see my mom and Professor Rowan again. What are your plans, Max? Brock asked. I'm going back to Johto, Max said. I still have 3 badges to win before I get into the Silver Conference. How about you, Brock? Well,
Okay, hold on. No, no, no. Bad fireplace. Bad fireplace. Bad. Down. Bad.
Okay, we're good now. Well, I was kind of hoping to go back to Sinnoh with Ash and Dawn, Brock said. There's still a lot of Sinnoh Pokemon I haven't seen, and there's some really good breeders there, too, who I haven't had a chance to visit yet. What are you gonna do, May? Norman asked, slicing a sandwich steak. May looked down at the table for a moment before answering. I'm going to Sinnoh, too, she said quietly. Norman looked at her in surprise. Why? I thought you would keep traveling in Freyne and try to catch some new Pokemon. May shrugged, unwilling to give the real reasons why she didn't want to go back to Freyne. How could she possibly explain that she wanted to go back to Freyne because that's where Drew was going? It should be fun, Dawn said, breaking the silence. Can't wait to see you try some Sinnoh contests, May. Maybe I should enter some too. Give you a little competition. It broke the ice, and May laughed. I look forward to it, Dawn, she said with a grin. It's been a while since I had a really good opponent. Why have you gone red, Ash? Misty asked curiously from across the table. Ash began to choke on his cereal, and Brock had to thump him on the back. It's not my fault, Ash protested. May's laugh made it happen. He went back to his cereal, supremely unaware that everyone's mouths were wide open at this admission and that May's face had gone so red that it rivaled her skirt in intensity. Norman raised an eyebrow, and Dawn did her best to contain a giggle. Hey, Max, Ash said, still not realizing what he said. Remember I promised you a battle one day? Max's glazed expression of shock at Ash's comment snapped off to be replaced by a look of extreme excitement. You mean right now? He asked. Ash grinned at him. I'm ready if you are, he said. Yeah, nice segue. Somehow that segue worked. Well, I mean, he didn't even know that was what was going on, but you know. But, you know, a lesson. A lesson. It's not a segue. It's a segue that still works, right? Exactly. So, you know what? You take what you can get. Also, I need to take a drink. Holy cow. Okay. Whew. All right. Okay, now. I guess we're doing a battle now. Lovely. Here we go. Ash and Masks faced each other in the front path. Brock stood halfway between the two, acting as referee. Everyone else stood behind Brock, watching the two trainers with interest. I hope Max knows what he's up against, Delia whispered to Carolyn quietly. Oh, I'm sure he does, Carolyn replied. I watched Ash train with his Pokemon for a year and a half. If anything, I'd say Ash needs to watch out for Max. He's never been seen my boy battle before. This will be a 3-on-3 match, Brock announced. Substitutions can be made at any time on either side. There is no time limit. Challenge ready? Ready, Max nodded. Challenger ready? You bet, Ash said with a grin. Begin! A reap, it's showtime! Max shouted. Cynthia, I choose you! Get it? Because it's Gen 2 Pokemon, so Pokeflow, it's Smash Melee. Anyway. In twin bursts of light, the electric type and fire type emerged. Mareep crackled with electricity as it stared down at its smaller opponent. Cyndaquil gave a little yawn and then charged up its flame. Mareep, let's start things off with a tackle! Max commanded. Cyndaquil, you smokescreen and follow up with flame wheel! Ash ordered. Cyndaquil opened its mouth and sprayed out a large and thick cloud of smoke. But Mareep halted its headlong charge, unable to see. He could hear a whirring noise from just beyond the smoke cloud. Without waiting for direction, it dashed forwards, hoping to intercept Cyndaquil. Too late it saw the revolving flames racing around the smokescreen at high speed. Max let out a gasp of horror as the flames collided with his Mareep, sending it flying backwards, back-arched in pain. Mareep is unable to battle, Brock ruled. Cyndaquil is the winner! I'm sorry, Mareep. Guess I let you down this time, Max said softly as he recalled his Pokemon. Great job, Cyndaquil, Max said with a smile. Looks like our training over the last couple weeks really worked out. Take a rest now. That was some impressive strategy by Ash, Norman said to Carolyn. He used that smokescreen to defend and attack, defend and attack at the same time. They overheard and couldn't help nodding in agreement. Yeah, she said. Almost looked like a contest move. Battlers ready for round 2? Brock asked. Both Ash and Max nodded. Begin! I'll do first this time, Max, Ash said, grinning. Muck, I choose you! The poison type burbled as it landed on the path with a splatter. Max gasped and stepped back at the terrifying sight. On the sidelines, Misty, Delia, Professor Oak, and Gary just grinned. They knew that while Muck looked intimidating, she was really the most gentle and affectionate Pokemon of Ash's and all. Max glared at the Muck and chose the first Pokemon that came to mind. Grovyle, go! Yeah, okay, so, a grass type against a poison type. Yeah, that's good job, Max. Good job, Max. Vile, the grass type yawned, crossing its arms as it looked at the Muck with a bored expression. Ash was surprised. Surely Max of all people knew that Grovyle was weak against Muck. This was the fix set, that's not me! So that looks like they lampshaded it, which is good. Grovyle, use Bullet Seed! Max shouted. The Grovyle leaned forwards and fired intensely green seeds at Muck. Counter with Sludge Bomb! Ash commanded. With a huge roar, Muck shot out a spray of purple spheres. They collided head-on with the Bullet Seed attack. Most of them collided, splitting on contact, but some on each side found their targets. Muck stretched upwards, absorbing the Bullet Seed harmlessly. Max's Grovyle, overconfident in its own abilities, decided to take the Sludge Bomb instead of dodging. To his immense shock, the attack did a lot of damage. The Grovyle collapsed to his knees, holding his stomach in pain. Grovyle! Max gasped. Muck, get close to Grovyle! Ash shouted. Grovyle, get out there and use Quick Attack! Max said, panicking. Now, truly panicking. As Muck drew closer, the Grovyle managed to get to his feet. He jumped backwards and then shot forwards in a blur of motion. Ash grinned. Exactly what he wanted. Take the attack, Muck! He shouted. Muck stretched upwards, and the Grovyle ran directly into her protective layer of sludge. Now use Body Slam! The Grovyle looked up in terror as Muck collapsed in on herself. Grovyle, trying to use Fury Cutter! Max shouted. Sections of Muck's body seemed to pulse outwards in a sudden flurry of motion. Grimly, Muck held her ground, and in only a few moments the struggle subsided. Grovyle is unable to attack, Brock said. Muck is the winner! Great job, Muck, Ash said with a smile as the poison type gave him a squelch hug. Want to keep battling? Muck, Muck nodded, turning back to face Max. Max bit his lip. He was down to his last Pokemon while Ash still had all 3 of his left. He knew he only had one choice to make. Gardevoir, let's go! He shouted. The Pokemon murmured as it appeared. Okay, bear in mind, everyone, this is still Gen 4. Fairy type did not exist yet. So, technically, not a type disadvantage. So, just so you know. Alright, use Confusion, Max shouted. Fight back with Gunk Shot, Ash ordered. Muck began to glow blue and was lifted into the air, damage slowly accumulating the longer she was held up. Muck fought for partial control and spat out a stream of putrid juices. The confusion was only focused on Muck, and Gardevoir was helpless from the retaliation. The fetid liquid splashed on her body and she screamed, inadvertently halting the confusion as she tried to scrape the Gunk Shot off. Ash saw his opening. Muck, use Sludge Bomb, he commanded. The purple sphere shot forward once again, aimed directly at an oblivious Gardevoir. Protect! Max defended. Gardevoir instinctively surrounded herself with a glowing green sphere. The sludge bomb reflected off the protect and barely missed hitting Max. Now you psychic and send Muck flying! Muck glumped in surprise as she was lifted in the air. Gardevoir took extra care to spin Muck as she threw her backwards. Muck landed at Ash's feet. Defeated. Muck is unable to battle! Gardevoir is the winner! Ruck ruled. Good job, Muck. Did a lot of damage, Ash said as he recalled his Muck with a smile. Now, Cyndaquil, I choose you! Cynthia! I cannot do that high of a voice, I'm sorry. The fire-type squeak has appeared for the second time. Use a flamethrower followed by Flame Wheel! A fiery blast of flames launched from Cyndaquil's mouth, expanding over the distance as it rapidly closed on Gardevoir. Use confusion to stop that flamethrower! Max shouted. The Gardevoir held out a glowing blue arm. The flamethrower streamed off in several directions. Max laughed at what he saw was a certain victory. Yeah, certain victory when he has like 2 Pokemon to go through, dude. You're like in a 2-stock situation here, brah. Anyway. The laugh turned into a stutter of shock. Surrounded in circular flames, Cyndaquil was barreling down the center of the flamethrower by using its flame wheel. The attack smashed directly into the Gardevoir, sending her stumbling backwards. Both Pokemon glared at each other for a few moments, Gardevoir panting heavily. Then, with a shudder, she keeled over forwards. Gardevoir is unable to battle! Cyndaquil and Ash are the winners! Brock announced. Max collapsed on his knees, hugging his exhausted Pokemon before recalling her. He heard footsteps and looked up into Ash's kind eyes. Great job, Max. You and your Pokemon really worked hard out there, he said. I'll never be as good as you, Max said dejectedly. Don't say that, Ash said, gripping his shoulder and putting him to his feet. Do you think I would have had any chance against Cynthia today I started out? All it takes is training. I have 6 more years of experience and I've competed in 5 more leagues than you. I know the battle will be closer next time, just like how you keep getting closer to beating Misty every time you battle her. But you'll always be more experienced than me, Max said, seemingly determined to have a bout of self-pity. Ash wouldn't let him. First time I ever competed in a league, I finished top 16, he said. You've already beaten me there by coming in the top 10 in your first competition. You'll beat me yet. With the match over, all the spectators apart from May and Dawn had gone back into the house. May watched curiously from the sidelines as Max spoke to Ash, or as Ash spoke to Max. She couldn't hear what Ash was saying, but Max was beginning to look a lot happier now that he had at the end of the match. She began to feel a warm glow spread inside her heart. And that is Chapter 13. Ho ho ho! Chapter 13! So, yeah, okay, so it seems that, yeah, it seems that Max is still very inexperienced. So, okay. I think based on the timeline, that Max is 13, maybe? At this point? Little hard to say. I do know for a fact that Ash is 20 years old. That was pretty much explicitly stated by means of mathematics. Because it was said that this takes place 10 years after the start of his journey. He started his journey at 10, so 10 plus 10 is 20. Quick maths. 2 plus 2 is 4, minus 1 is 3. Quick maths. But yeah, so we got a battle, and you know, it's nice to see Ash giving some encouragement to someone so dejectedly, or someone who's taking the loss pretty badly. Because I gotta tell you, that sort of mentality can be quite common in things that you take very, very seriously. Like if you compete in Smash and Splatoon, it can be very easy to just sort of like wallow in self-pity, like saying, "Oh, I'm never gonna get banned from a link, or I'm never gonna get top 8 in a local," and it's like, yeah, it can really feel that way. It can really feel that way sometimes, but Ash has the right of it. When he started, he never would have actually. He would not be in anywhere close position to defeat Cynthia, like when he started out. He's basically saying that everyone starts somewhere, and that's very true. Everyone starts somewhere, and it's far from a foregone conclusion It's far from a foregone conclusion if you're not at the place that you want to be in the time that you want to. It's a marathon, not a sprint. It's a marathon of sprints. But one individual sprint does not necessarily mean you're going to lose the marathon or that you're going to drop out of the marathon. You know what I mean? So I really like how Ash is trying to keep up this, like, you know, how he's trying to be, you know, giving good advice here. I think it's good. I think it's great. I think it's great. Anyway, chapter 14, Gift. Although, come to think of it, how long is this chapter? Okay, it's I think a little bit longer, but not that much longer. Okay, this might take about 20 minutes. So okay, so maybe about 1:15. Okay, let's try this. Let's try this. May washed from the grass as Ash and Max walked past her, chatting about their battle. Her gaze followed them into the house, and she gave an audible sigh when the door closed. Her heart still had that warm feeling, but she wasn't entirely sure what it was or why she had it. She felt a tap on her shoulder. "Hey, May," Don said with a smile. "Feel like having a chat?" "Why, is something wrong?" May asked. "Not on my end, but you kind of look like you have something you want to talk about." May looked at her newest friend, surprised. She didn't know Dawn very well, but it seemed that Dawn already knew her well enough to tell when she had something on her mind. "I guess I could use a chat," she said. "I could probably talk to Max or Ash normally, but I don't think Max would understand. And Ash..." She stopped abruptly, her face flushing. Not looking at Dawn and not knowing what to do, she began walking around the side of the house into the backyard. With Dawn in step behind her, she headed over to the pond, pulled aside some reeds and sat down at the water's edge, looking across the water to the tree where she and Ash had talked two nights prior. "So why can't you talk to Ash?" Dawn asked innocently. May looked down at the water lapping against the bank. She felt suddenly tongue-tied, and could only shrug. She chanced a glance at the coordinator from Sinnoh and was surprised to see a huge grin on her face. "What?" May demanded. "Isn't it obvious?" Dawn asked. "No." Dawn sighed. "Every time you look at him, you start to feel strange. Your heart begins to dance whenever he looks at you and smiles, and when you see him laughing with another girl, your stomach starts to tie itself in knots. Whenever he does something kind for someone, you grow warm and can't help but think how he's always been there for you." May looked at her, absolutely thunderstruck. How did you... Is it that obvious?" Dawn thought carefully for a moment before answering. "Not to everyone," she said effusively. "I just wish I knew why I started feeling like this." May sighed unhappily, looking back out of the water. Dully, she noticed her Squirtle and Ash's Corphish playing in the shallows on the other side. "I just wish I knew what these feelings are." Dawn looked at her, completely surprised. Could it be that May had no idea what her feelings were? Besides the fact that she literally just said she doesn't know what they are? Yeah, I'd say so. Personally, I think there's a slight possibility. "You've got what I call the Brock syndrome," Dawn said. May looked almost aghast. You don't mean that It can't be that. With Ash?" Dawn nodded silently. "But how did you guess?" May asked, almost desperately. "Brock noticed," Dawn began, but May gave out a loud groan and cut her off. "And naturally, he told everyone what he thought," she muttered. Dawn looked at her, surprised. "You've got me all wrong," she said earnestly. "Brock didn't notice because of you. He noticed because of Ash. When he realized, he asked me to see if I thought..." She trailed off, suddenly realizing what she blurred out. May looked at her, mouth agape. "You mean that he..." "As far as I know," Dawn said. She stood up hastily, brushing down her short skirt. "I think I'll go in for lunch," she said, running off to the house quickly. May watched her run to the house and then turn back to the pond. Her mind was swirling with Dawn's unexpected revelation. Corphish and Squirtle began racing around the pool. They passed by raucously, but May didn't even notice them. She kept replaying the conversation with Dawn in her mind, and all of her recent moments with Ash. She recalled his comment at breakfast that morning when Misty had asked him why he had turned red. "It's not my fault! May's laugh made me do it," he said. At the time, she had blushed, but the comment had made her feel happy for reasons she hadn't been able to explain. Till now. She came back to Earth as Squirtle and Corfish did another lap, splashing her accidentally. She looked down at her wet shirt and sighed. At least this spot in the reeds was safe from view of the house. There was a short patch of grass to sit on, and the reeds kept the place hidden from almost every place in the garden. It was the reason that she liked it ever since she found it. Gave her a place to think without fear of being disturbed by her brother. She touched the wet spot on her shirt and gave a slight grimace of disgust at her memories in Johto. She was well aware that most men were attracted to a woman's chest. She was also aware that her chest was slightly bigger than average for girls her age, and that people had been attracted to her for that reason before. Thoughts raced around madly in her head. Does Ashley like me because of my chest? Of course he doesn't. I don't think he's ever seen a girl as anything more than a friend before. Well, if I'm his first crush, he may be interested because of them. It is what normally gets a guy's attention the first time he ever notices a girl. Ash isn't like Drew. He doesn't like you because of your chest. He likes you for something more. Thought the same thing about Drew, and look how that turned out. You remember what happened that night. Shut up, shut up, shut up! Ash isn't Drew! He's as different from Drew as Max is from Harley! Squirtle? They looked up and realized that she was shaking from the memories. Her Squirtle was tugging her arm, looking at her with a worried expression. I'm alright, Squirtle, she said softly. Just some bad memories. Johto. Squirtle nodded understandingly. He'd been there and knew what had happened. Squirtle patted her gently on the arm and then dived back into the water to finish the race. May touched her wet shirt again lightly and lay back on the grass. At least I didn't get splashed much. It's pretty warm, so it should dry quickly. She closed her eyes, her head suddenly buzzing with tiredness. She'd been up later than anyone else last night trying to look after Latias, and she'd woken up pretty early, too. The sunlight began to play lightly over her eyelids. She felt suddenly warm and sleepy. Before she had time to take another breath, she'd fallen asleep.
More of these fluffy little conversations, huh? Oh yeah.
Oh, I love it, I love it, I love it, I love it, I love it. Ah, man, I love it. I love it, I love it, I love it. Wasn't that a little lovely moment? Don't you think that was a little lovely moment? I sure think so. She awoke suddenly. She could tell from the lights streaming in that she'd been asleep for a couple of hours. Her stomach rumbled. She was nauseatingly hungry. She stretched and then levitated into the air. She moved over lazily to the table where a buffet had been spread out. In the next room, she could hear a crowd of people having a conversation. Latias looked at the food on the table, wondering how she would be able to eat it. Her arms weren't exactly designed to put food on a plate, or use a fork for that matter. Feeling hungry, Latias? She heard Brock say as he entered the room. She chirped happily at him, nodding her head eagerly. He chuckled. Here, let me get some for you. What would you like? Bread bun? Rice balls? Fruit salad? Latias thought for a moment and then pointed to the bread and fruit salad. Brock grabbed a small plate and bowl from the table and loaded them both up for her. Latias chirped happily as he put them on the table and rubbed her under his neck to say thank you. Then, without another glance, she tore into the food. Glad to see that you're feeling better, Brock said with a smile. He reached out to help himself with some more pasta when the back door slammed open and Dawn burst in. She looked around quickly and breathed a sigh of relief and saw that Brock was the only one in the room. You were right, Brock, she said as she walked over him. He does like him, but she didn't even realize it. How did she figure it out? Brock asked. Dawn grinned. I just spouted a lot of nonsense, know I was right, she said, and laughed. Actually, all I did was describe what I thought those feelings were like. Luckily, I was right! They figured it out in the end. So they both like each other, Brock said, thinking. Question is, how do we get them to realize it? At this, Dawn scuffed her legs against the ground. Actually, I think I let it slip that Ash likes her, she said, embarrassed. Brock stared at her. May not be a bad thing in the long run, he said slowly. May obviously likes Ash, and if she thinks that Ash likes her, they might get together! Don shouted in excitement. Who might get together? Ash asked, entering the room. Don jumped in fright, and Brock accidentally dropped his plate of pasta. Latias went over to him, chirping excitedly. How you feeling, Latias? He asked fondly, stroking her on the back. She pressed up against him, still chirping. Good thing Latias was here, Brock whispered to Don. She nodded in agreement as he stooped to the floor and began to clean up his dropped pasta. No need to worry, she said with a wink. So, what were you guys talking about? Ash asked, focusing on them again. Who might get together? Brock looked up at Don quickly, and she looked down at him nervously. He began. You and Latias, Don blurted out, flying through her cheek. You seem to be really good friends, and she's really powerful. I was just saying to Brock how great it would be if you two were together. Brock looked at her and groaned inwardly, burying his face in his hands. He'd never heard anything more absurd than someone capturing a legendary Pokemon. Nolan befriending Articuno is one thing, but even Brandon's Regirock, Regice, and Registeel weren't really legendary, just extremely rare. He dreaded to think how Latias was going to react. He waited with closed eyes and bated breath. Latias, do you really want to come along with me? He heard him ask. Brock cracked open an eye just in time to see Latias stare at him, completely open-mouthed. This can't be good, he thought. Then, to his complete incredulity, Latias' shocked stare turned to the biggest smile he'd ever seen. She nodded her head eagerly before transforming into her human shape. She gave Ash a huge hug before reverting back into her normal form. Brock was surprised to feel himself breathe again. He didn't realize he was holding it in. He turned to Dawn and saw that she was shaking in relief. That was the worst lie I ever heard in my life, he whispered. Dawn smiled back weakly. I thought it, she whispered back. Wow. I think in D&D, we would consider that like a DC 20 deception check, and she somehow got a nat 20 on that. With disadvantage! How did that work? Well, technically it is possible. It's a 1 in 400 chance. And she passed it with flying colors, man. Holy cow. It's crazy. Ah. But still, aren't they the best wing people ever? Oh, I love it. I love it. I love this. I love them. I love them all. I love this. Ash sighed and stretched out against the tree comfortably. He had traveled through 4 regions and seen countless night skies, but this spot in the garden was his absolute favorite place to look at the stars. He looked upwards and saw that it had clouded over. He heard a faint thunder in the air. Heard a hint of thunder in the air and realized that there wouldn't be any star watching tonight. Oh well, he thought. He gave another contented sigh and looked back out over the pond. Ash? He started. He hadn't heard her walking towards him. He turned and found himself looking into the maid's dazzling sapphire eyes. Hey, May, what's up? He asked. She sat down next to him and looked over the pond, too. A light breeze ruffled past them, and Ash couldn't help noticing how her hair fluttered. His face tinged scarlet, quickly turned away. Not a whole lot, really, she said softly. Just thinking. Mind if I ask what about? Just stuff, she said, watching the ripples. Ash sighed and leaned back. He knew that it was no good trying to probe May if she didn't feel comfortable talking at the moment. She'd tell him when she was ready. Then he remembered something. He reached around the side of the tree to where he'd strewn his travel pack and began to rummage in it. May turned her head slightly to look at him. It was true that she was thinking about a lot of things, but Ash hadn't tried to pry. She felt exceedingly glad, even. It's the mark of a true friend that I'll wait until I'm ready to tell, she thought. She was surprised when Ash suddenly turned to her, holding a canister in his hands. Here, May, this is for you, he said. She took it with trembling hands. Ash, what is this? She asked. He leaned over and pressed a small red button at the base of the canister. The opaque covering vanished, leaving the glass through which May could see a red-orange egg licking sully in the moonlight. May began to feel her eyes glisten with tears. Is this... It's an egg from Charizard, he said. Liza found it with Charla in the Storytime Valley, and she gave it to me. She thinks that it could be from my Charizard. Ash, she whispered softly. To his complete surprise, she threw her arms around him and began sobbing into his shoulder. What? He managed to stutter out. She continued to cry against him. Uncomfortably aware of her chest pressing against him, he patted her awkwardly on the back for a few moments. A horrible feeling of repetitiveness rose up inside him, but he didn't know what else to do. At last, May stopped and broke away from him. Ash, this means more to me than you realize, she whispered. Why? He asked, confused. She gave him a truly radiant smile. He felt captivated by her gaze and couldn't turn away. Because it's a gift from you, she said. He felt his face burn, and he finally managed to look down. It's just a Pokemon egg, he muttered, completely embarrassed. I just thought you'd like it and buy a Charizard, and you already have a Bulbasaur and a Squirtle. She smiled at him, even though he wasn't looking at her. He really is a nice guy, she thought. I know he'd never hurt me like Drew did. A loud clap of thunder broke the train of thought, and a raindrop landed squarely on her nose. She and Ash both leapt to their feet. Come on, let's get inside! Ash shouted, grabbing her hand and running into the house. Panting, they managed to make it before the downpour really started. May looked down. Ash? Yeah? Could you let go of my hand, please? She asked. He let go at the start. Sorry, he said sheepishly. I didn't even realize. May laughed and then dashed upstairs, holding the canister carefully. Race you to bed, she called down. You have an early start tomorrow. Oh, isn't that sweet? Ah, I love it. My heart, man. Ah, I love it. 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 Ah. I love it, man. I love it. And hey, we got that done about like 4 or 5, like 4 minutes ahead of time, a little bit. You know, it works. Ah. Man. What does everyone else think? Doesn't everyone else think this is just so nice? Like, think about it. Isn't it great? Isn't it great? I mean, I don't know. I think it's great. Anyway. Now then. Chapter 15. Ray. Okay, I gotta open. Sorry, I have to open my notes first. The notes are important. They're super important. Okay, here we go. Chapter 15. Ray. May's eyes snapped open. She glanced around the dark room for a few moments before she found the digital clock. She gave a slight groan when she saw the time. 5:42. She pounded her pillow once in frustration. It was the 4th time she'd woken up that night. She closed her eyes and tried to fall asleep again. She rolled over. She punched her pillow back into shape and tried sleeping on the other side. She opened her eyes and looked at the clock again. 6:03. With a resigned groan, she sat up and began looking for a toothbrush and a towel. It didn't look as if she'd fall asleep again. So I'll get ready for the trip, she thought. No point in just waiting for everyone else to get up and then end up clogging the bathroom. She glanced over at Dawn snoring lightly on the bed and shook her head. She's had that bed every night. She grabbed her clothes and crept out the door into the hallway, taking care not to accidentally trip over Misty on her way out. She shut the door softly and tiptoed down the hallway towards the bathroom. She paused at the landing, surprised to see a light on the stairs. Her heart began to pound as she heard movement. It isn't a burglar, she thought. Still holding her clothes and towel in one arm, she fumbled quickly with Pokeballs on the belt that was always attached to her pants. She found the one she wanted and released the Pokemon inside quickly, hoping that whoever was downstairs would hear the ball open. Lee? Her Eevee asked.
There's someone downstairs, May whispered quietly. I think it might be a burglar. I'll need your help if it is.
Eevee.
Pokemon nodded. Slowly, May began to creep downstairs. Her hands felt suddenly sticky with trepidation. She noticed that she was shaking a little. Pausing, she took a couple of deep breaths and then nodded, steeling herself. She began to quietly walk down the last few steps, Eevee at her heels. She stopped at the foot and barely peeked her head around the corner to see who it was. Good morning, May, Professor Oak said with a smile. Yeah, did you really think there's really going to be anything there? Ah, silly mortals. Anyway. I'm sorry I startled you, May, Professor Oak chuckled. I've gotten up pretty early every morning to look after the Pokemon for so long that it's just become a habit. I thought you were a robber, she said faintly, holding the mug of tea the professor had made for her. Ash laughed on the other side of the table. Only you could mistake Professor Oak for a thief, May, he chuckled. What are you doing up so early? May asked him accusingly. Ash shrugged. Same as you. I couldn't sleep either. I came down only a little while before you did and saw that Professor Oak was already awake and looking really bored. Now I haven't had anything to do since my lab burned down, the professor explained. I'm so used to working as soon as I get up, it's quite a shock to sit around doing nothing for a couple hours. The only company I've normally got this early is Noctowl. Professor Oak was just telling me about his theory on why Latias is infected with Pokerus, said to May. The professor nodded. Oh boy, Lord, I'm coming! You see, May, everything on this planet is connected. Humans and Pokemon eat, drink, and interact with each other. When we die, our bodies are returned to the Earth so that new plants can grow and feed others. I hate to sound cliche, but the simplest name for it is the circle of life. Are you following me? May nodded. It seemed pretty straightforward so far. Good. Now, while everything on the planet may be connected to everything else, living creatures are more closely linked to other living creatures than, say, a rock. And it divides again. Humans connect on deeper levels to each other than to Pokemon, and vice versa. But then in Pokemon, it divides again. A Ralts will connect more easily to other psychic Pokemon than to a ground type. Within the psychic grouping, it is closer to those in its own evolutionary line than a Hypno. And of course, a Ralts will always connect more easily to another Ralts than to a Kirlia. Understand? I think so, May said slowly. Makes sense, but I can't quite see where you're going with it. It's because there is one group of Pokemon where these connections don't work, the professor said. This group of Pokemon is unique. In this group, there are over 30 different species of Pokemon, and they represent nearly every type. Some of them are ancient in origin, so old that they are considered myths. Others are so rare that they are nearly one of a kind. Legendary Pokemon, Ash supplied. Exactly, Professor Oak nodded. All of them are rare, and most are impossible to capture, although there are a few exceptions. They are so valuable that some people spend all of their lives searching, just to catch a brief glimpse of one. Your uncle spent most of his life trying to catch a sight of a Moltres, Ash. I still don't see what this has to do with Latias and the Pokerus, May said, puzzled. Legendary Pokemon are intimately connected with one another. At all times, they can sense the presence of other legendary Pokemon, as well as how they are feeling. When the collector Lawrence III tried to capture the legendary birds in the Orange Islands, they could sense what was happening. When Zapdos felt Moltres' absence, it claimed Fire Island as its own. Guardian Lugia sensed Moltres' capture and went to try and free the legendary Pokemon. Why did Suicune suddenly appear to try and help Celebi when it was caught and corrupted? How did Rayquaza know that the Deoxys was hiding in Larusi City? In fact, how did the Deoxys know that the core of another Deoxys was being kept there? Why did Rayquaza suddenly appear over the stadium and attack only Latias? It all boils down to the connection that legendary Pokemon share with one another. So, you're saying you think it was this connection between Rayquaza and Latias that passed on the Pokerus? May asked. It's the only thing that makes sense, Professor Oak replied. Legendaries are so closely linked that they don't need physical contact to pass on the Pokerus. He sighed and looked towards the window and the dark world beyond. Unfortunately, if I'm right, it means that other legendaries could also be infected. I have no idea how close they need to be to pass on the disease through their connection. But if it's at any great distance, then we could be looking at an epidemic. Or even a pandemic, right? Epidemics kind of imply like it's like a regional thing, or like it's kind of like stuck in a specific region, right? Actually, hold on. Let me look up this definition. Pandemic versus epidemic. Okay, yeah. So epidemics are generally contained or expected in spread. Pandemics are basically outside specific areas and are out of control. So, yeah. So you know that's a little bit of a problem, right? So yeah, I think Professor Oak is kind of underselling it a little bit here, if you think about it, really.
But still, that was a nice and interesting conversation, wasn't it?
I love the world building that this fic does. It's quite good. I like it quite a bit, and it's a big part of why this fic is so interesting and why I wanted to read it as well. I do think it's very compelling. You know what I mean? And it does so in a rather canon compliant way, I think. At least up to the point where, you know, like, the anime would have diverged and all that. But then again, this is already like a large divergence anyway. You know what I mean? Because, like, there's a whole bunch of different regions. Or, like, there are a couple, like, different regions that were mentioned that, you know, are actually just fan regions. Invented only for this fanfic. And none of them involve, like, Alola or Galar or anything like that. I mean, obviously, those didn't exist in the canon yet. So, of course, that wouldn't be name-dropped all the way back in Gen 4 times, but, you know. But yeah, this is already a large divergence, but even so, it's still, I'd say it's still quite canon compliant for, like, a lot of, like, the show that it's based in, or, like, a lot of, like, the canon that it's trying to, like, pull from here. All right. Now, you'll be sure to look after yourself, won't you? Delia asked as she fussed over Ash. Of course I will, he said, trying to wave her away as she attacked his head with a comb. You will treat all of your Pokemon equally, won't you? Professor Oak asked, stepping in front of Delia. You've never had so many Pokemon on your team at once while you travel, and they'll all need extra special care. One of the reasons why most trainers are only allowed to carry 6 at a time. Don't worry, Professor, Ash said with a smile. I'll be sure to look after them all. I'm only taking one of my Tauros, though. I'll leave the rest here to help rebuild the lab. Thank you, Ash. They'll do wonders, I'm sure. Now, I have something for you, May, he said, moving to the side and allowing Delia to attack Ash's hair again. For me? She asked, surprised. Yes, you haven't caught anywhere near as many Pokemon as Ash, but you prove yourself to be an exceptional trainer who takes amazing care of their Pokemon. So, I'd like to give you this. He placed an ordinary Pokédex in her hands. Pokédex? She asked, confused. Yes and no, he said. You see, a Pokédex is just a portable encyclopedia. It's also your ID. You can tell anyone who you are, what you've captured, what Pokemon are on your team at the moment, and the number of Pokemon you're allowed to carry. This is called an X-Dex. It stands for Extended Pokédex, and it's the same thing that Ash got when he became a Frontier Brain. You mean I can carry more than 6 Pokemon? She asked. Professor Oak nodded. That's right, he said. I know that you'll treat all of them well, so this is my gift to you. Thank you, she whispered. I really appreciate this. You know, Norman laughed, stepping forward. He wrapped his arms around her daughter and hugged her tightly. We know. Travel safe, he said. We'll miss you, but we'll be waiting at home when you come back, Carolyn added as she joined the hug. May gently detached herself from the two. You better get going now, she said. Bye, Mom and Dad. I'll see you soon, Max. Good luck in Johto. Right back at you, Max said with a grin. Waving backwards to the crowd of friends and family. As the crowd of friends and family, Ash, May, Brock, Dawn, and Pikachu began to walk in the direction of Viridian City. A light breeze ruffled the grass around them and helped to cool them momentarily from the delicious warmth of the sun. Ash stopped at the top of the hill closest to Pallet, and turned momentarily, looking back at the town. His house was no longer visible, but the destroyed lab was plain to see. He stretched and looked up at the sun before turning back to his friends. Looks like we're finally traveling again, he said with a grin. Okay, and I kid you not, this is the exact next sentence here. A clawed hand came rocking out of the bushes and snapped itself around Pikachu. Yeah, see, okay, so this is one of the things that does kind of drive me up a wall a little bit. Now, I understand this is definitely something that does happen with like a lot of new writers, and this writer did admit this was his first fanfic, but there's like no transition at all between him saying, "Hey, okay, it looks like we're finally traveling again," like with happy Fire Emblem music playing in the background, and then freaking Clawed hand appearing and capturing Pikachu and all that. Anyway, Hey! Ash shouted, rolling towards the bushes as Pikachu was retracted. Prepare for trouble! An ominous voice snarled. Are you still after Pikachu? May asked in amazement as Jessie stepped out of the bushes. I'd have thought that after 10 years of failure you'd have given up. Think again, Twerp, she smirked. Looks like I've got Pikachu in the bag. As soon as I get back to headquarters, I can use a Dark Ball and give your yellow rat to the boss. I'm not gonna let that happen! Ash shouted. Heracrot! Survivor Poison Tail! Jessie shouted back. The survivor burst from the Pokeball, from its Pokeball, tail glowing a menacing purple. It held its tail at Pikachu's throat. Pikachu instantly stopped struggling. From the trees behind them, a figure burst out and wrapped his arms securely around May, pinning her arms tightly to her sides. She screamed in fright as he dragged her backward in paces. Ash turned again, a Pokeball in his hand. He looked in dismay as his eyes met Drew's. Well, this is a problem, isn't it? Jessie said with a toying smile. The girl or the Pokemon? Who are you going to save? Drew won't hurt May, Ash said confidently. He's just keeping her safe. All you need to do is take out your survivor. Drew snorted and Jessie giggled. Right, Drew won't hurt May, she said with a raised eyebrow. How can you be so sure you won't try something else? Get off of me! May screamed, trying to stamp on Drew's feet. If you go for the girl, say goodbye to your Pikachu, Jessie said menacingly, nodding to Survivor. The poison tail was flicked an inch closer and Pikachu strained to move its neck away. If you try to save Pikachu, you can forget about traveling with May. Ash stood in the center, his mind torn as he turned from May to Pikachu, and back to May again. Dawn tried to reach for a Pokeball surreptitiously. Take your hands away from your Pokeballs, Drew snarled, watching her every move. Dawn swallowed and slowly moved her hands away. Looks like we've won this one, Twerps, Jessie said with a smile, beginning to edge around in a circle until she stood next to Drew. We both got what we wanted. Come on, Drew, let's go. Vine Whip! A voice shouted. Ash twisted as several vines shot past him, much thicker than those on his Bulbasaur and Daily. One of the vines shot into the extendable arm that Jessie was holding, snapping it in two and causing it to spark dangerously. A second smashed into Survivor's head at full force, knocking it out cold. A second pair wrapped around May and shot into Drew. He doubled over in pain and let go of May, who was quickly reeled in. Why, you! Drew growled as he got to his feet, clutching his stomach. Flygon, come on out! With a roar, his Pokemon appeared. Heracross, I choose you! Ash shouted, finally able to send out his Pokemon. Flygon, use Flamethrower! Venusaur, counter with Solar Beam! The mystery voice commanded. Heracross, Mega Horn! The Flamethrower and Solar Beam collided, causing an explosion. Heracross burst through the smoke with a glowing horn and smashed into Flygon's unprotected belly. The Pokemon gasped and free fell to Earth at the intensity of the attack. Flygon! Drew gasped. He recalled his Pokemon, gave the group a dirty look, and ran back to the forest. Well, that was fast. Ash, May, Brock, Dawn, and Pikachu all turned to Jessie, who stood seemingly rooted at the spot, still holding the sparking arm. She managed to squeak out before the power shortage in the arm overloaded. It exploded, and with a scream, Jessie was launched high into the air. Looks like Team Rocket's blasting off again, Ash said softly before turning to see the Venusaur and its owner approaching. She wore a sleeveless blue shirt with matching socks and a red skirt. Her long brown hair cascaded down to the small of her back and was held down in places by the strap of the yellow bag she carried over one shoulder. Her green eyes sparkled underneath the brimmed white hat. Good to see you again, Ash, she said with a playful smile on her face. I was wondering if I'd see you before you left on another journey again. I think I came after you. Looks like you were in quite the dilemma. Hooray, Ash said, stepping forward with a huge grin. You started training again? May, Brock, and Dawn all stood and watched in shock as both Ray and Ash broke into laughter and embraced. A cold pit formed in May's stomach and began to spread upwards. Her eyes began to glisten as she held back tears and stepped backwards. With a sob, she turned and ran down the path, holding an arm for her eyes. I'll go after her, Dawn said, and quickly followed May, with Pikachu close behind. Pain coursed throughout his body again, but this time he knew that it was not external. This time, he knew that it came from within. Clouds seemed to hang directly over his head as delusional images swam before his mind. He clasped a three-fingered hand to his heart and did his best to shut out the images, but still they came. They know, he thought. Somehow they know. They found me here, and now they're trying to incapacitate me, make me helpless so they can capture me. I've been here too long. I need to go to Vermilion City. Throughout Cerulean City, people stopped and stared, puzzled and a little afraid. They had all heard the scream. Spread-eagled on a rooftop, the caped figure lay immobile and unconscious, utterly hopeless. And that is the end of chapter 15. So, we meet a new character. For those who don't know, and I'm sure a lot of you don't know, this is partially an original character. This is actually based on Leaf from Fire Red and Leaf Green. So yeah, you know, one of the Pokemon trainer alts in Smash Brothers Ultimate. You know that one. Yeah, she had her own game. Can you believe it? Is apparently I'm guessing I think isn't that like one of the like potential names that you can name her? Kind of like how Gary and Ash are like default names, or like one of the suggested names that you can give Blue and Red respectively. I think that's what it is. But yeah, so the author does confirm in the author's note at the end of this chapter that is basically like who she is. She's meant to be she's meant to be the female trainer from Fire Red and Green. And in this particular story, apparently, one of the two other trainers who started from Palette with Gary and Ash. So apparently she started her journey around the same time, like on the same day. Off screen, presumably. But yeah, remember those two people? Anyway. But yeah, so that's chapter 15. So Ash has a childhood friend of sorts who saved them all from, oh boy, from quite the dilemma. As, she so eloquently put it. But now, I guess we shall see what's going on here now, though, with the next chapter. Chapter 16, Capture. James looked longingly at the apple trees on the side of the road. He glanced up and saw Paul walking resolutely onwards, hands in his pocket. Completely silent. He sighed and trudged on after him, stomach rumbling. Traveling with Paul hadn't exactly been a fun experience. They had walked almost non-stop, resting only infrequently. On the rare occasions when they did stop, Paul battled his Pokemon against each other relentlessly. It had been a real shock to James the first time he saw a 5-on-1 battle. "We're almost there," Paul said, breaking the long silence that had stretched between them at last. James hurried up to where Paul was standing and realized that he had only been talking into his Pokétch. He saw Paul glance back at him and then turned back, lowering his voice and covering his mouth with his hand. He spoke for a few more moments, nodded once, then deftly shut the lid. "My father is going to meet us here," Paul said, sitting down on a fallen log. Why not just keep on going if that's where we're heading?" James asked. "'Cause," Paul said, his dark eyes boring into James. "He wants us to wait here. Okay?" "Okay," James muttered. Then his expression brightened as an idea struck him. "Come on out!" he called, throwing 4 Pokeballs into the air. In a blaze of brilliant red light, Cacnea, Carnivine, Mime Jr., and Fearow appeared. He smiled happily as they stretched in midair. The smile quickly turned into a little shriek of horror and pain as Cacnea and Carnivine enveloped him fondly in a tight hug. "Pathetic," Paul snorted, turning to look into the forest. "What's so pathetic about letting your Pokemon for a little fresh air?" James asked, feeling slightly abashed for some strange reason. You mean that you actually want them to enjoy themselves?" Paul asked. "Well, yeah, why wouldn't I? These Pokemon are just tools. They aren't supposed to enjoy themselves. Their only purpose is to be used in battle. You let them have fun and they'll start thinking you're all friends." "But we are!" James protested. Paul snorted again. "It's pathetic," he repeated. "Friendship makes a Pokemon weaker. If you think you'll forgive them when you lose a battle, they'll just give up as soon as they start getting hurt." "That's not true!" James shouted, leaping up in anger. Paul looked at him coldly. "Oh, really? Then tell me, when was the last time you and your friends won a battle?" James looked at him, a sinking feeling in his chest. Perhaps Paul was right. It had been a long time since he'd won a battle. Several years, in fact. "You see," Paul said softly, "being friends with a Pokemon just holds you back. You can only unleash their full power if you treat them like the inferior creatures they are." He turned and looked back at the forest. "Good, he's arrived." James looked and started. Right, ringed in the trees around them were a group of people dressed in black. A large red R splashed across their chests. A tall, broad-shouldered man, dressed in an orange suit, stepped forward. His gaze rested on James for a moment, and a contemptuous smile curled across his face. "Good work, Paul," he said, turning to the lavender-haired trainer. "It looks as if Cassidy and Butch have failed since you brought him alive." Paul shrugged. "He was stuck in a tree and being attacked by a flock of Fearow when I found him. Apparently, he was in the Coliseum with the others when a hyper beam knocked them all in different directions. Could be that your mercenaries are still trailing the other two. I figured it was best if I brought him back for you to deal with personally, Father. Giovanni nodded, sharp gaze wandering over a trembling, clearly bewildered James. Didn't my son tell you? He asked civilly. Tell me what, sir? James stammered. Giovanni took a step forward and kneeled so that he was at James' level. My dear, dear James, he said softly, almost kindly. You've cost our organization a pretty penny over the years. Too much for so little result. You're expendable. I recently sent out a rocketoo to try to find your little trio. Their sole orders were to kill you on the spot. James blanched, and Giovanni reached out to clasp his shoulder. But now that you're here, he whispered. He whirled and thrust James away from him. The white-garbed Team Rocket members stumbled backwards and was grabbed by several of the grunts. Take him back to headquarters, Giovanni snapped. I'm not in the mood to deal with him now. Put him in Silver Cell. I'll finish what's left of him later. Seize his Pokemon and store them away. Paul, I want to see you in my office the moment we get back. Move! In minutes, the forest was still and silent. There was no sign of the confrontation that just occurred aside from a small Furo which had perched in a tree, its tears streaming to earth. Not including our first specimen, we have now obtained a Raikou, Suicune, Regice, and Uxie, not forgetting the Rayquaza that terrorized southern Kanto, Giovanni told his son, reclining slightly in his chair. Paul nodded slowly. Quite the accomplishment, he drawled, especially with capturing that Rayquaza. But forgive me, you need one specimen of every legendary, and yet Latios is dead. Your henchwomen saw to that. A crooked smile crossed Giovanni's lips. Oh, I imagine that Annie and Oakley are quite relieved to still be incarcerated at the moment, he said. Their mission was simple. Capture Latios and Latias. I still do not understand why they chose to try and steal a trinket and kill Latios instead of the simple recovery that I outlined for them. It isn't of no importance, though. There are other Latios in the wild, and Professor Namba has recently discovered their migration routes. We should soon have one under our possession, enlarging our collection. And as more legendaries are captured, brought here, and infected, the rest will feel stronger and stronger urge to come and free their brethren because of their connection to one another, Paul stated, knowing what his father had planned to say next. Exactly, Giovanni said. And once we have one of every species collected here, we will be able to call the ultimate Pokemon back to this reality. Now, I have a new mission for you. I need you to go to Hoenn. We have uncovered evidence that Celebi is currently residing in Petalburg Forest. I want you to capture it. We're talking about a legendary Pokemon, Paul said. With the exception of Brandon's weakling Regirock, Regice, and Registeel, none have ever been captured. I don't think it's possible to poach a Pokemon with the kind of hidden strength that Celebi has. Giovanni stood and looked out the window. Several years ago, we almost caught Celebi, he said. I sent our #1 field specialist at the time, Vicious. He collaborated with Namba to produce one of the ultimate Pokeballs. It captures any Pokemon, even those belonging to other trainers, without fail. He turned and threw a black sphere at Paul, caught it in reflex. Dark Ball, Paul muttered, examining it closely. Giovanni nodded. A Dark Ball, he acknowledged. Use this to capture Celebi. Take someone with you. I don't care who. Just bring me back Celebi as quickly as possible. Stop by in Johto on the way back. I need you to pay a visit to Kurt of Azalea Town. He has something that I require for our purpose. Paul nodded silently and watched as his father sat and faced the window again, understanding that he was dismissed. Stiffly, he turned and left his father's office. He walked down the hall and quickly descended down a flight of stairs. He knew exactly who to take with him. James shrank back as far as he could, doing his best to avoid meeting the fiery gaze of his cellmate who sat on the floor opposite him. I've been waiting a long time to get my hands on a rocket, the man growled. James gulped nervously. I don't even know why I'm in here. Perhaps you can shed some light on the mystery, he continued. I'm afraid I can't, James said, licking his dry lips nervously. All I know is that they're holding me here until they are ready to kill me. Probably hoping that I'll do the job for them, the man chuckled darkly, his long steely gray hair swinging as he got to his feet, cracking his knuckles. Are you going to? James asked almost inaudibly. No, I'm no murderer. Although I sure would like a shot of that Giovanni and that Namba. I still had my Salamence. You mean that you don't? James blurted out. What kind of mud do you have for brains, half-pint? The man demanded. You think your boss is foolish enough to put me in here with a Pokemon? My Salamence or Chikorita can bring me out here with no problem. I don't even know how they managed to catch me. Is your name Silver, by any chance? James asked hesitantly. Sure is, the man called. Silver's my name, and Pokemon is the game. My goal is to have a real battle with Moltres one day, without being interrupted by Team Rocket. James gulped as the man took several strides towards him, grabbed him by the collar, and pinned him up against the wall. I don't know what you guys... I don't know what you guys have against me, but I sure ain't impressed, he breathed. I want to know why I'm in here, and I want to know now! Put him down, Silver, the cold voice growled. Silver half turned, still holding James by the shirt. What do you want, Half-Pint? He asked. I've come for him, Paul said, pointing at James. Silver looked at Paul scornfully. Why? Because you're worried I might hurt him? Don't want your friend damaged? He's being given his last chance at life, Paul said flatly. He's coming with me on a special mission. Now put him down. Don't make me use my Electivire. Tough kid, Silver taunted. Having to hide behind your Pokemon. Tell you what, why don't you come in here without any Pokemon and try to get them away from me? I don't play that way, Paul said, tossing a Pokeball into the air and releasing his Electivire. Thunderbolt, he ordered. Silver screamed as the current coursed through his system, forcing him to drop a terrified James to the ground. Paul watched him emotionlessly, allowing the attack to continue for a good deal longer than was necessary. At last, he raised his arm, and the Thunderbolt stopped. Silver slumped to the floor, groaning slightly. Out, he ordered James. I don't understand, James murmured as he followed out the cell, followed closely by a Electivire. I told you, you've got one last chance to save your life, Paul said impatiently as he slammed the cell door shut and took it. Going to Hoenn. I want to be back in 48 hours, so you better not slow me up. Hoenn? James asked. What about my Pokemon? You can take your Cacnea, Paul said. The rest stay here. Now move! How do I know I could trust you? James said shrewdly. You've already lied to me once before about the 6-course meal. Paul rolled his eyes, whirled, and grabbed him by the shoulder. They stared at each other for a moment. You have to trust me because you'll die if you don't, Paul hissed. If you don't want to die, then follow me. He strode off quickly, leaving James rooted to the spot in bewilderment. In the cell, Silver regained consciousness. He let out a moan of pain as static electricity crackled across his body. He struggled to his feet and leaned heavily against an iron wall. He cursed in surprise as the wall swung outwards, sending him crashing to the ground. Dazed, he looked up and realized that he was in the hallway. He scrambled to his feet and examined the wall closely. That kid, he whispered. He forgot to lock the door. He let out a sigh and cracked his knuckles. This is gonna be fun, he said, grinning. Let's see how Team Rocket handles this. And that is chapter 16. Oh boy, so the plot thickens, huh? A little bit? Maybe? Maybe, kind of. A little bit? I don't know. Anyway, who's ready for a short chapter? Who's ready for a nice short chapter? Chapter 17, Memory. May squinted slightly as the bright sunlight washed over her face, almost seeming to tickle her eyelids. Grumbling sleepily, she rolled over.
She stretched and folded back her hand as she felt it touch something warm and soft. Panicking, she moved away from the unknown entity as fast as she could while lowering her torso was still entangled in the sleeping bag. While her lower torso was still entangled in the sleeping bag. Sorry, I can't English, apparently. She stared at the sleeping bag that had lain next to her as in early morning confusion. Then, with a slight motion, Drew's head appeared from beneath the cover. She relaxed as the previous day's events came back to her. She had been on her way to Ekritik City when she met Drew training his new vert for the next contest. It had been getting dark, so they both decided to camp where they were and travel to the next contest together. May looked at him and smiled. It would certainly be nice to have someone to travel with again. She'd been going solo for so long that she was actually quite lonely for some human company. Heck, she was so desperate for another person to talk to that she wouldn't even mind if Max showed up out of nowhere and started to bug her. She cast her eyes downward, feeling sad at the thought of her brother. Here she was in Johto while he was on his own journey in Hoenn. She wondered briefly what Pokemon he'd caught and how many badges he'd won so far. She gave a little sigh. She had been able to get in touch with them since she'd left for Johto. Thinking of Max, she couldn't help remembering her other friends. She thought briefly of Brock, wondering if he was still at the theater gym now or if he had gone after. She closed her eyes, shaking her head to lose the thought that had been dangerously close to breaking through again. Ever since their group had split up, she couldn't even think his name without feeling a twinge of pain. And thinking about him brought a world of loss. I don't know what's wrong with me, she muttered to herself. I can think of Max and Brock, so why is that every time I think of him, I start feeling so depressed? Thinking about me? She heard Drew ask. She snapped her head upright, pink tinges in her cheeks. No, of course not. Why would I be thinking of you? May asked, laughing nervously as she waved a hand of dismissal. Drew shrugged. I don't know, but you were thinking about some guy to figure there was as much chance of being me as the next guy. Eavesdropper, May muttered. Drew laughed and stood up, stretching in the sunlight. Come on, he said. Start breakfast. Wait quickly enough, we can make it to Ekritik by nightfall. Sounds good, May said, jumping up. You cook the food, I'll do the fire. Good luck getting it started, Drew snorted. Remember the trouble you had last night? It's a wonder you ever had a fire when you traveled with Max and Brock. And Brock normally lit the fire, and he was good at those kinds of things, May cut in quickly. I'll get it started, though. Don't you worry about that. Sure, I'd like to see you try it, Drew answered humorously. Looks like we'll be having cold bread instead of toast. May grinned as he turned and began to rummage in his bag for food. Making sure that he could see her, she quickly called out a Pokemon, set up a teepee of sticks, and whispered her instructions. Drew turned and gaped at the hot fire that sat between them. Hey, how'd you make a fire so big so quickly? How'd you even get it lit? Trade secret, May said, smiling, enjoying his confusion. Drew simply stared at her, completely astonished, and maybe laughed at his amazement. Then Drew caught sight of the Blaziken standing behind her. Hey, that's not fair! Use your Pokemon to start it! Drew protested. Whatever works, May said, smiling sweetly. Now, I think you said you were going to cook breakfast? Muttering darkly to himself, Drew put a few slices of bread in a frying pan and began to cook them over the fire. May smiled inwardly as she sat back down in her sleeping bag and watched him do all the work. May was jolted out of her memory by the sound of Dawn gasping as she drew closer to the rock where May sat. She stood there a moment, holding a hand to her chest as she took ragged breaths before plopping down next to May. Boy, you can really run, Dawn gasped. May didn't respond. Why'd you run off like that, May? Dawn asked. Did you want to meet Ray? Seems like a really nice person. No, she does she? May asked, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Let me ask you something, Dawn. The other day, you let it slip that Ash likes me after I tell you that I like him. So what happens? He gives a big hug to this girl who just comes waltzing up when she's never even given me a little hug. The girl he's supposed to like. What does that tell you, Dawn? Dawn looked at her fellow coordinator, who glanced away, refusing to meet her eyes. Still, Dawn had seen the tears begin to trickle down her cheeks. I think you've got it all wrong, May, he said softly. Ash doesn't like Ray in that way at all. They're just childhood friends who were separated by their journeys. That hug he gave her was just an "it's great to see you, I haven't seen you in years, how you been" hug, not an "I love you" hug. Then why hasn't he ever given me a hug when we've been separated like that? May asked, her voice fluctuating slightly as she tried desperately not to cry. Dawn sighed. I don't know him as well as you or Brock do, May, she said. But if what Brock told me is right, Ash lost all contact with her. He hasn't spoken to her since the day before he started his Pokemon journey, and that was 10 years ago. He hasn't even been able to just say hi over the video phone. At least you two were able to keep in touch. She stood up and brushed a little dust off her skirt. I'm going to go back, she said. I think you probably should too. Ray and her Venusaur did save you after all. You should at least say thank you. May nodded quietly and spoke almost inaudibly. You go ahead. I'll be there soon. Dawn nodded and headed back towards Ash, Brock, and Ray. May waited until she heard her footsteps fade, then released all the raw emotion that was pent up inside of her. The wrenching feelings she had unfairly judged Ash, the guilt that she hated Ray before she even said one to her. Her memories of traveling with Drew and Johto. Went wrong, she whispered to herself. What changed him from a friend to a monster? She sat there for what seemed to be a long time until she had cried all of her emotions out. Then, wiping her face with her sleeve, she got unsteadily to her feet and began walking back to her friends. See? That was a nice short chapter, wasn't it? Nice and short. Nice and shorty short. The next one is really not that long either, but, you know, it's a little bit longer. Not that much, though. But still. Another nice little lovely moment, you know? You love to see these. You love to see these. You know, it's a nice way to bring up the levity after very evil stuff is going on behind the scenes, you know what I mean? So, I don't know. I think it's good. I think it's good. But, you know, I guess I'm please. I don't know, man. All right. Chapter 18, Conversation. If only she'd gotten a little closer to the trees. Could have grabbed her, Cassidy complained to Butch. He peered nervously out from behind the bushes and motioned for her to lower her voice before answering. At least we know one the guess is right. She is following those kids. All we have to do is follow them and she'll turn up eventually. I wonder where James and that Meowth have gone, Cassidy said with a frown. It's weird that she was working with that green-haired kid instead of her partners. You think something happened to them? I hope so, Butch muttered, his head turned away. Still don't think I could kill them. Neither do I, Butch, Cassidy said. She grabbed his arm and forced him to meet her eyes. But we've got to. If we don't, it's our own necks on the line. Come on, let's keep following those kids. Looks like they're going to Viridian City, but I don't want to risk beating them there only to find out what they bypassed it. Sure, whatever, Bush answered unhappily. Ray watched curiously out of the corner of her eye as May ran off, followed quickly by Dawn. I wouldn't worry too much about it, Rex said before she could ask. I'm sure Dawn will sort it out. She seems very emotional, Ray said, looking directly at Ash. He hesitated for a moment. Good to see you again, Ray, he said weakly, spreading his arms wide. She looked at him, completely unimpressed. Don't try to pull the innocent act on with me, Ash Ketchum, she said. Maybe I haven't seen you for a couple of years, but we were best friends growing up, and I know you a lot better than you realize. She stepped close until her face was right in his and lowered her voice to a whisper. I know what it feels like. I've been there. I also know what it feels like to be treated badly. You better treat her right, or I'll be coming after you. As Ash began to sweat, Ray stepped back and spoke normally again. Even masters get cut off in their training, he said to him. Just try to remember the people around you too, okay? Ash stood still, a little unsure of what to do when Ray turned into Brock. I guess she doesn't know me as well as she thinks she does, he muttered under his breath again, wishing from that pain instead of Dawn. So, Brock, do you remember our battle? Ray asked. He laughed. Do I ever? This was one of the best battles I ever had as a gym leader. I thought I had you beat easily when Geodude took out your Rattata in one attack, but your Bulbasaur is fantastic. Still can't believe that you combined Laser Leaf with Petal Dance to make a Leaf Storm, even though your Bulbasaur didn't know the attack. Using Petal Dance to create a lot of leaves and then using Laser Leaf to repel into on is just fantastic! I still haven't seen anything like it since. Ray laughed. How'd Ash do against you? She asked. Well, he won the second time, but it was kind of a fluke. I actually ended up just giving him the badge because he walked out in the middle of the battle.
What?
Ray asked, completely shocked.
But why would he do that?
Brock smiled, remembering the first time he battled the fourth trainer from Pallet. The gym was dark. The gym is dark. As usual, Brock kept his eyes partially closed. Over time, he discovered that this helped him sense both his and the opponent's Pokemon in battle. It was a technique that he would adapt for life, although he did not know it at the time. The heavy stone door slowly creaked open. Brock stirred on the hard granite seat. He could only assume that this was the fourth and final beginning trainer for Pallet down. He was determined to win this match, feeling mortified with himself for losing 3 in a row against rookies. "I'm here for a gym battle," the trainer declared boldly, stepping forwards. Brock made out a Pikachu at his side and grinned inside. This trainer was using a Pikachu, the battle should be a piece of cake. The light snapped on, and Brock vaulted from his chair, landing neatly on the gym floor. He recited the rules of the pewter gym, and Ash sent his Pikachu forward. Moving back to his battle box, Brock decided to end the match right then and there, sending out his Onix. The Pikachu shot out a weak electric attack, which did absolutely nothing to the Rock Snake. One quick bind attack from Onix, and the match was over. He watched as the young trainer ran from the gym with Pikachu in his arms, feeling a little sympathy. You can only imagine how humiliating it must be to lose so badly. He was surprised the next day when the trainer returned, looking more confident than ever. They began the rematch, the trainer sending out a Pidgeotto and Brock choosing Geodude. It didn't take long for the flying type to be knocked out, but Ash stunned Brock by choosing his Pikachu as his final Pokemon. He was stunned again when a much more powerful electric attack than the one he used the day before knocked out his Geodude cleanly. A grudging respect began to grow for the young trainer. Even though both of his choices were at a massive type disadvantages, the trainer refused to give up and found ways to win. Brock could see raw talent, and he admired the boy for it. He knew that the match was his to win, though, and he sent out his Onix for a rematch of the day before. He watched grimly as the rock type used Bind on the Pikachu again. The young trainer shouted out an attack command desperately, but the electricity had absolutely no effect, deflecting off of Onix to smash harmlessly into the ceiling. Brock knew that he'd won again. Then, Onix roared out in pain. Brock gasped in shock as the sprinkler system, raised by the electricity, short-circuited and sent torrents of water downwards, drenching everything on the field. He didn't see what happened next, but a blinding flash lit the gym and Onix crashed to the floor, releasing the bind. Yeah, everyone remember that? Also, I apparently had the out of character thing up all this time. Oopsie poopsie. But yeah, everyone remember that episode? I sure do. I think. I'm pretty sure I do. Yeah, I do. Trust me. Wait, let me see if I got this right. Ray interrupted. Ash won the match because the sprinklers went off? She then roared in laughter, causing Brock to frown. In our first match, I could see that the bind attack was really hurting Pikachu, and it was in no state to fight. So I called the bind off. Ash forfeited in the match and took his Pikachu to the Pokemon Center. In our rematch, it was Onix who couldn't fight anymore because of a fluke more than anything else. The water combined with the electricity to do what electricity alone couldn't do. But Ash called off the match again. He knew that winning because of malfunctioning sprinklers wasn't really winning at all. He just walked out of the gym there and then. So, why'd you give him the badge if he didn't beat you? Ray asked. The gym badge signifies a trainer's skill. Defeating a gym leader takes a lot of hard work to do. But what happens if a trainer comes close to victory and he just can't quite pull it out in the end? Ash may not have had the raw power or the right strategy, but he proved he had the right heart. That's why I gave him the badge. Wow, Ray said. I didn't realize that there was more to gym battling than just beating a trainer. So how come you decided to leave the gym and follow Ash? Brock chose not to answer straight away, diverting his gaze instead to the large Venusaur that stood nearby, eyes closed as it rested in the sun. So I'm guessing that this evolved from your Bulbasaur, he asked her. She nodded proudly. Yep, the same. I've kept her with me all this time, even though I'd never actually competed in a league. Why not? Brock asked, surprised. You did a fantastic job against me, and I've always thought you could get in the top 8. Ray shrugged. It just never worked out for me, he said. I was doing really well at first, but by the time I got to the 6th gym, I'd just worn my Pokemon out. was traveling so quickly, I never trained my Pokemon properly. I never did beat the 6th gym, or any other gym for that matter. I just wasn't strong or smart enough to realize that I had to train my Pokemon before I could battle with them. Ash finally snapped out of his thoughts and wandered over. What other Pokemon do you have, Ray? He asked, looking at her Venusaur. Take a look, she said, smiling, throwing 2 more balls into the air. In the familiar burst of red light, a Farfetch'd and a Xatu appeared. Awesome! A Farfetch'd and a Xatu! Ash said, gazing at the 2 Pokemon. He also had a hard time catching them. They're both really rare. It's easier than people think, Ray said, smiling as Donna reappeared in the group. She's on her way back, he said to them. I think she's okay now. Ray looked uneasily in the direction that May had run. You think I should go on ahead? She asked them. No, Dawn said, shaking her head. I think you should be here. I kinda got the feeling that she wanted to talk. Okay, another short chapter. But it was nice. It was nice. Like, it's nice having this conversation here. Like, building up the characters. And, like, I don't know. I love these little moments, man. It's a nice little break from, like, all the darkness and despair. Not that there's been any darkness and despair, mind you, but you know what I mean. But I think now we are getting into some more of the, to some more important backstory stuff in this chapter. Like, more world building. With Chapter 19, Lessons. Assuming I can find this thing. Oh, I'm supposed to be looking at the ants. I think. Okay, there we go. I just need to control F. That works. Okay, here we go. Dawn stopped and stared at the sight that spread out before her. A wide grin split her face, and she dashed back to where Ash, Brock, May, and Ray were resting. Guys, it's just up ahead! She said excitedly. Viridian City! Ray jumped to her feet and looked north eagerly. Now let's get moving, she said. Got here a lot earlier than I thought we would. Come on, guys, over here we can get some good broom at the Pokemon Center. Oh, the Pokemon Center, Brock explained, a goofy smile beginning to spread over his face. What are we waiting for, then? Without looking back, he tore off down the path. Ray stared after him open mouth and looked sideways at Ash. Is he always this, enthusiastic about going to a center? She asked her uncertainly. Let me put it this way, Dawn intervened, a wicked grin on her face. His goal is to become the world's greatest breeder. Oh, that would explain it, Ray said, failing to notice the double entendre as she began walking down the path with Dawn right behind her. May and Ash both rolled their eyes at each other as they followed, Pikachu on Ash's shoulder as usual. How do you think it'll take for him to get to the center? May asked Ash. Probably about a minute, he answered with a laugh. He turned a corner and saw Dawn and Ray, frozen in shock. A Rhydon stood in the middle of the path, Brock just in front of it. It snorted at them and flexed its arms menacingly when Brock shuffled slightly to the side. Rhydon, the voice called out. I told you to stop them, but you weren't supposed to scare them. The Rhydon turned and they saw Noland walking up the path towards them, a cheery grin on his face. Sorry about that, he said as he recalled his Pokemon. We've had a devil of a job trying to find you. All the press are still here, believe it or not, and we've been hard-pressed to keep them away from Pallet Town. You mean the other Frontier Brains? Ash asked. Nolan nodded. That's right. It's been a couple of days since that Rayquaza attacked and vanished, but because you went straight back to Pallet Town, everyone still wants to know what happened to you. Half the planet seems to think that you just disappeared into thin air. Ash felt a sudden guilty surge. What about Cynthia? He asked. Can't believe I don't know this, but how did she get out okay? Yeah, she's fine, he said. She left the Coliseum when her last Pokemon was taken out by the Rayquaza. She got out before it collapsed. She came straight to Viridian City. I can tell you that's been a couple of very trying days for her. Press won't stop asking her about where she thinks you are, how she feels the match is going, etc. She's only stayed here as long as she has because we were all waiting for you to show up, and none of us knew how long that would be. Why not just call his house? Brock asked. That would have been the easiest thing to do. We tried dozens of times, Nolan explained. The line was disconnected. We think that the professor probably did that so the press could call, just to give you a couple of days peace from the media. So, how come you've all been looking for us? Don asked. Well, only Annabelle, Lucy, and I have actually been trying to find you, Nolan said. Greta, Tucker, and Brandon have all been handling the press with Cynthia. He laughed. It's a dream job for Tucker, I can tell you that. You know how much he loves the limelight. At the rate he's going, he'll have a talk show on every channel before the month is out. His face then grew serious. But as to why I've been looking for you, it's so that we can get you into Viridian City as quietly as possible. I know it isn't ideal for secrecy, but Pokemon Center is the only place that we were able to book rooms at. The only place we were able to book rooms at. So, how do we avoid the press? Ash asked, frowning. He loved being a league champion, but he absolutely hated the constant media covers that seemed to follow him from town to town. There's a passageway nobody knows about that goes straight to the Pokemon Center. We'll use that so you can get there without anybody noticing. Tomorrow we'll call a press conference for you, and that will hopefully be the end of it. Brilliant, Ash muttered. More time to embarrass myself on camera. Nolan laughed. Don't worry, we'll keep it brief, he chuckled. And we'll make sure that they all understand that you aren't going to let yourself be followed by news crew anymore. He casually threw a Pokeball into the air, causing a brilliant green light to shoot straight upwards. He caught the ball and laughed as he saw them all shielding their eyes. That's just to let Annabelle and Lucy know that I found you, he explained. How did you do that? Brock asked curiously. Never seen a Pokeball let out a green light before. Nolan just shrugged. You'd be surprised what Pokeballs can do, he said. The technology behind them is incredible. How can such a small device hold something as large as a Gyarados or as heavy as a Snorlax while getting bigger and heavier? How come they can catch some living things like Pokemon, but not others like humans? How can a Pokeball tell the difference between sending out a Pokemon to battle and sending out a Pokemon to be permanently released? How can they be transported over the internet to another location with the Pokemon still inside? His eyes gleamed. Technology is incredible if you just take a look beneath the surface. I'm examining Pokeballs now. I've even been in contact with Silphco, although they don't actually know that much about Pokeball technology themselves. They were amazed when I told them my discovery about the green light. Imagine inventing something and not knowing how it worked or what it's capable of doing. Yeah, imagine AI companies in general, nowadays, and in the new 20s. In a nutshell. Scott really made the right decision when he made you the head of the Battle Factory, May laughed. Nolan grinned. What can I say? The man knows what makes people happy. Oh, hi, Lucy. The Pikewing stepped sedately out of the bushes, brushing a stray leaf off her tube top. She nodded to Nolan and looked around the group. A very slight smile crossed her lips when she saw Ray, but she was distracted when Brock bounded forwards and clasped her hands as he bent on one knee. Lucy! The days since I last saw you have seemed as barren as the surface of the moon. I've waited day and night to be at your side once more. Lucy looked down at him, small red patches on her cheeks. My queen, he began. He let out a high-pitched scream and collapsed, twitching. Lucy stood rooted to the spot in surprise as the Pokemon that had materialized behind Brock lowered its arm, the purple palm fading back to the usual black. It looked at her and let out what sounded like a short chuckle before returning, grabbing Brock by the shirt and dragging him into the bushes. Bro, it muttered as it reemerged from the undergrowth. What was that all about? Ray asked, feeling a little creeped out. I told you that his goal was to be the world's greatest breeder, Dawn said with a wicked grin. Ray's eyes widened as she finally realized what Dawn had meant earlier. So, he doesn't want to be a Pokemon breeder? She asked faintly. Oh, he wants to be that too, Dawn reassured. He just wants to find a girlfriend first. And you feel safe around him? Trollgun keeps him under control, Ash chuckled. Besides, it's more of a personality quirk than anything else. Every time a girl has actually fallen for him, he realizes she isn't the one for him. So he just goes around falling in love with every girl he meets, hoping to find the right one? Yeah, that sounds about right, May laughed. May looked as if she was about to be sick. Noticing this, May hastened to reassure her. Don't worry, he said. Get used to it pretty quickly. Get used to what? Annabelle asked as she came around the corner in the path. Brock, May answered, seeing Ash open his mouth to respond and feeling a twinge of jealousy. He is a little unusual, Annabelle laughed, but you're right, you do get used to him quickly. No, I was always a little offended that he never fell for me like that. Well, that is because we all thought you were a boy, Ash laughed. Annabelle winced, although only May and Lucy noticed it. Yeah, no kidding, she muttered, looking out at the ground. Lucy quickly intervened. Are we ready, Noland? She asked. Sure are, he grinned. Dog Trio! In a flash of red light, the ground type appeared. Dug Trio, I need you to dig us a way to that tunnel we found earlier. Trio! The Dug Trio acknowledged. Dug downwards and was quickly lost to view. Wow, that Dug Trio's fast, Ash said it admiringly. Still a fairly new catcher, so it needs some training, Nolan said. It's definitely fast, but the attacks just aren't strong enough yet. Here, you're sure giving us some of my homemade Pokemon food, Brock said, reappearing suddenly in the midst of them in imperfect health. Everyone jumped at his appearance. It's a recipe I started with my Onix and Geodude, and when my Mudkip evolved into Marshtomp, I was able to perfect it. It's made especially for ground types. Recovering quickly from a shock, Nolan reached out and took a pre-offered piece. He popped it into his mouth and chewed it gingerly for a few moments. He swallowed and beamed. That stuff is fantastic, he exclaimed. Brock, I think that food would be perfect for my Duck Trio. How much do you want for a bag of it? Take it, it's a gift, Brock said. I don't make Pokemon food to make money. I do it because I know that the Pokemon enjoy it. I don't have any more time. I don't have any more of it on me, but as soon as we get to a Pokemon Center, I'll make a batch for you. Thanks, Brock, Nolan said, clapping him on the back gratefully. Do you have any food for water types? Lucy asked, smiling at him. At the sound of her voice, Brock seemed to go into a dreamland again. Bro. Brock exhaled as she raised an arm, the palm glowing purple. Brock started and moved smartly out of the way, fishing in his bag for a sample of the water-type food to give to the Pike Queen. Annabelle rolled her eyes as the Dug Trio came barreling back up the tunnel. Trio! It said proudly to Norman. To Noland. Not Norman. Norman's not here. Great job, Dug Trio, he said, looking at the ground type fondly. Lead the way for us now. The Dug Trio moved down the tunnel, followed by Noland, Ray, Dawn, Annabelle, Ash, Pikachu, May, Brock, a watchful Krogunk, and Lucy. The passageway sloped steeply downwards, and they all had to move sideways to try to prevent themselves from falling over. Dawn stumbled and almost collided with Ray, but a watchful Annabelle managed to steady her just in time. We're here, Nolan called. Nolan called what seemed like hours later. He jumped down from the tunnel that Dug Trio had made and looked back. Ray was peering nervously downwards, looking too scared to move. It's easy, he said to her reassuringly. Just crouch when you land. It's a 10-foot drop, Ray said flatly. No way that I'm jumping from something this high. Nolan sighed and released his Venusaur. Use Vine Whip to help her down. Thor, Venusaur nodded, sending out a solitary vine which wrapped around Ray's waist. She gave a little squeal of shock as she felt herself lifted off the ground. No, I don't like this! Put me down! She began to scream hysterically, struggling so hard against Venusaur that it was forced to send out another vine to secure her. The moment her flailing legs came into contact with the ground, they buckled and she collapsed, shivering, her eyes wide and unseeing. Venusaur, help the rest of them down. Norman... You mean Noland? Said. I didn't even notice this error before. Venusaur, help the rest of them down. Nolan said as he hurried over to Ray in concern. Dawn looked at Ray curiously as she was lifted down with Annabelle. The ride didn't seem that bad to her. She watched Nolan speaking to Ray quietly as Ash, Pikachu, May, Brock, and Lucy were all lifted down. Where are we? May asked. Dawn tore her gaze away from Nolan and Ray and realized that they were in what seemed to be a large stone tunnel. The passageway was fairly wide, but the air seemed slightly dank. She reached out to touch a wall and found that it was damp with some kind of moss. This is a tunnel. It was built many years ago, Lucy said. Seeing the confusion on everyone's faces, Annabelle decided to elaborate. It was built by the Kento forces during the last of the Sias Wars, she explained. You all know about those, right? The group looked at each other and shook their heads simultaneously. Annabelle sighed. The Sias Wars involved the armies of 4 regions, she said. Kento, Shana, Goto, and Huin. All 4 were fighting for one goal. Not for land or money or slaves, but for a Pokemon so strong it was said to be the ultimate Pokemon. Few had ever seen it, yet everyone was convinced of its existence. Its name was Sias. Every region wanted to be the one who possessed this powerful Pokemon. And so they all declared war on each other, under the impression that whoever won the war would be able to control Sias. It was the bloodiest set of wars that the world had ever seen, she said, shaking her head. There were 3 of them. Each time one region was defeated, one war ended and another began. The first region to be defeated was Hu. They were said to have the strongest army, but Kento, Shana, and Goto signed a truce that would last until Huin was defeated. When that region fell, the truce ended, and they turned on each other again. In the battle to the north, the Red Kent... Sorry. In the battle to the north, the Red Kento forces did their best to hold Cameron Castle from the Green Goto army. Despite a moment of friendly fire, in which some of the Red forces accidentally attacked one of their own, who was clad in the blue-black tunic of Shana, they managed to hold off Goto. Still, the Kento forces were about to fall when in the distance, a magnificent light rose and spread over the battlefield. Believing it to be the wrath of Sias over their actions, both Kento and Goto dropped their weapons and walked away in peace. The light did not spread as far south as Viridine, however. Here, the Kento army was badly outnumbered. To compensate, they built tunnels for cover and attempted defeating the enemy through a hit-and-run tactic. The tunnel plan succeeded, and many Goto lost their lives. Suffering from a heavy loss of life, and having just received word from the northern body of the mutual surrender, the Goto forces retreated from Viridine. The Sias Wars ended with no victor, and Sias itself was never seen. As time passed and language changed, most names were altered. Kento was what is now Kanto. Goto was Johto. Huin became Hoenn. And Shana changed to Sinnoh. Having never been seen since the wars, the legend of Sias faded into obscurity. This tunnel was one of those built by the Kento army. Professor Alden, a renowned archaeologist, discovered it a couple years ago. Wow, they said. I never know that Hoenn used to be at war with Kanto. Does that mean that Ash and I are natural enemies? Annabelle couldn't help smiling. Only if you want to be, she chuckled. The Sias Wars were the last in our world's history, and they ended over 500 years ago. There's been peace ever since. But wasn't Lieutenant Surge confirmed to have been in a war? What about that? What kind of war? Well, whatever. Anyway. Come on, guys, Ray called, seemingly recovered from her fright. Let's get going. This tunnel is giving me the creeps. Where does it go, anyways? Brock asked as they set off with Nolan in the lead. It actually goes into the basement of the Pokemon Center, Nolan said. Just before Professor Alden was called in, Nurse Joy found out the basement floor was sinking in one spot. She called in Flint from Pewter City to repair it, and that was when they discovered the tunnel underneath. At that point, Nurse Joy called in Professor Alden. He stopped in what seemed to be just another stretch of tunnel and looked up, where a thin square of light filtered down. He turned to his Venusaur and nodded. The Venusaur reached up with another Vine Whip and knocked the square aside. Who's first? Nolan asked. I'll go, Brock volunteered, and he was quickly hoisted up by Venusaur. Ray? Nolan asked. Not me! Ray yelled, backtracking into Ash. You have to go up sometime, Ray, Don pointed out. Ray's eyes were wide with fear again. I thought there'd be stairs, and I'd rather stay down here if there aren't any, she murmured, beginning to shake. Nolan sighed and looked at his Venusaur. Use Sweet Scent, he said. Seconds later, Ray relaxed and slumped against Ash, her eyes half closed as her head lolled against his chest. Ash was glad of the darkness shield the glare from May that he could feel on his back. He breathed a silent sigh of relief when Venusaur lifted her up and Brock had dragged her from the vines into the basement. Ash volunteered to go next and was surprised to see that Ray had already recovered from the calming sense. At last, they were all in the Pokemon Center's basement. Nolan recalled Venusaur and carefully pushed the floor square back into place. Lead the way, Lucy, he said. The silent frontier brain nodded her head and led the way up to the main floor. She looked around for a moment, trying to find the hallway she wanted. She then quickly led them down one hallway, around a corner through the emergency room, which held a badly injured Meowth, down another hallway, and finally into the lobby. Lucy stopped short in surprise at the scene before her. Curious about what was happening, they all filed out behind her gate. An enraged Tyranitar stood by the counter, blood at its arms and a discarded Pokeball at its feet. Nurse Joy stood in between it and the trainer. Trying to stop the massive Pokemon from attacking me. Tyranitar, please stop! She begged. The Tyranitar simply roared and tried to slash over her shoulder at the trainer, dodged backwards. Bruce, stop! He pleaded. The Tyranitar lunged again, forcing its trainer back. Once again, and this time he hit the wall. We tech those. He looked for a way out, but realized he was trapped. Visible hate shone out from the out-of-control Tyranitar's eyes as it knocked a desperate Nurse Joy across the room. She screamed in pain as she slammed against the wall and fell motionless. We also tech those. Ash reacted without thinking. In a flash, Sceptile had been called out, and a devastating leaf blade connected with the back of the Tyranitar's head. Distracted, the larger rock type whirled and slammed a surprise dynamic punch into Sceptile's throat. The grass type screeched as it flew backwards, barely managed to land on its feet. Bullet Seed and then leaf blade again! Ash roared. The Sceptile unleashed a barrage of glowing seeds that began to run towards the Tyranitar. Growling viciously, the Tyranitar conjured up a stone edge. A series of small stones formed under the floorboard and soared towards the bullet seed, where it collided. Both attacks shattered on impact, unleashing clouds of dust. Through it, Sceptile leaped, its left arm blade elongated and glowing bright green. It connected with the Tyranitar's defensive dynamic punch. Both Pokemon held their positions, glaring into each other's eyes. The Tyranitar balled its other fist and swung again. Sceptile countered by using Leaf Blade with the other arm. Again, both attacks collided and the Pokemon held their positions. Sparks began to fly from the first impact, as both Pokemon had their energy drained from the fused attacks. Pound attack! Ash shouted. The Sceptile wrenched its right arm free and twisted his body. The dynamic punch whistled past Sceptile's ear. The grass type kept turning and felt his massive tail connect with Tyranitar's head. The rock type crashed to the ground, face first. Leaf Blade again! Both arms began glowing again, and Sceptile leapt into the air above Tyranitar. The rock type turned, just in time to see two streaks of green light slash over its face. With one last final grunt of pain, the Tyranitar fell still. Sceptile landed awkwardly on all fours, just beyond the downed Tyranitar. Sceptile! Ash yelled, running over to the injured and exhausted grass type. Sceptile, are you okay?
Tile!
The Sceptile reassured him, reaching over to a nearby plant pot and snapping up a twig to place in its mouth. Nurse Joy! Brock shouted, running over to the slumped woman. She moaned slightly in her unconsciousness, and her head dropped another inch. Trollgun burst from its Pokeball, ready to stab Brock with a poison jab. Seeing the situation at hand, however, it halted the attack and jabbed out a Pokeball on Brock's belt instead, recalling itself. Dawn marched over to the Tyranitar's stunned trainer, glaring daggers at him. What's wrong with you? She shouted. Can't you even control your Pokemon? I don't know how it happened, the trainer protested. Found a Meowth in the forest that had been hurt real bad. I caught it and asked Tyranitar to bring it here. I didn't want to, but it took it here anyways. It didn't want to, but it took it here anyways. As soon as I came in, it just started to attack me. That still doesn't explain why you can't control your Pokemon, Don yelled. Just look at all the damage it's done! She gestured around the ruined reception area. The desk was broken in half, and the damaged computer was sparking menacingly. There were scorch marks on the walls, and the floor was ripped open, revealing dirt and rock from when the Tyranitar had used Stone Edge. There were even a few cracks in the wall from when Nurse Joy had been slammed into it. What kind of trainer are you? She screamed, working herself into a real fury. Dawn, that's enough! Ash snapped. He stopped her tirade, surprised at the harshness of his tone. Then she glared at him and vented some of her fury out of him, too. No, it's not enough! She burst out. You don't even know what you're talking about! You never had a Pokemon ignore you before! I have was with Weasel, but I learned how to control it after a couple of days. This thing evolved into Tyranitar and it still doesn't listen! This trainer doesn't have an excuse for— The trainer has every excuse! Ash retaliated angrily. When a Pokemon evolves, its personality changes. They go from respecting his trainer to hating his trainer in a matter of minutes. That isn't the trainer's fault. How would you know? She yelled. You never been in that situation. You never had a Pokemon hate you. The Pokemon suddenly hates the trainer, then it must be because of what the trainer did to the Pokemon before it evolved. Charizard! Ash yelled, throwing his Pokeball out. The fire type roared as it appeared, looking for its opponent. Use Flamethrower on the hole in the floor, Ash ordered. Charizard blinked in confusion, but followed his directions without question. Now use Steel Wing on that plant to slice off a twig for Sceptile to use, Ash told it. Again, Charizard was confused, but used the attack readily. Good, Ash said. Thank you, Charizard. He turned to Dawn. What does that have to do with— Dawn began, but Ash interrupted her. I caught a Charmander that had been banded by its original trainer. As time passed, Charmander got stronger, and it became incredibly close. When my Charmander evolved into Charmeleon, though, it wouldn't do anything I asked, he said. It got even worse when it evolved into Charizard. I treated it as well as I could, but for some reason it just suddenly hated me. I lost in the Indigo League because of it, and I'd even let Team Rocket kidnap Pikachu just because it was hungry. Charizard looked uneasily down at the ground, scuffing its feet. Dawn stood there with her mouth open, her face reddening in embarrassment. I know exactly what this trainer is going through, because it's happened to me too, Ash continued. It's happened 3 times, in fact. And one of the other 2 was Pikachu. He looked sideways at the Tyranitar's trainer. The trainer can't be blamed if the Pokemon suddenly hates it. But the trainer does have to realize that it's their responsibility to get the Pokemon to trust them. The trainer took this as his cue. He stood up and offered a hand to Ash. Good to see you again, Ash, he said. I haven't seen you since we were both in the Whirl Islands. Hello, Richie, Ash said unsmilingly. Oh boy, remember this guy? From the Indigo League? Remember that guy? Remember this guy? Basically Ash if he was not in Ash's body. Basically. Remember him? Remember that guy? I do. I remember that guy. Yeah. Cool. But also, how do we like that story that Annabelle told earlier? Ooh. Oh, very great, huh? Very great, huh? Right? What if I told you there's even more stuff of that coming? Oh, isn't it great? Oh, you haven't seen anything yet. You've seen nothing yet, y'all. Did I see why I wanted to read the story to y'all so much? Chapter 20, Recapture. Although I do still have to find the thing. Always gotta find the thing. "400 years ago, The man stared at the cowering peasant that lay in front of him with his forehead touching the ground. Pure anger shone from his eyes as he looked disdainfully down. His guards on either side shifted nervously as they felt his dark aura pulsing. It had not been long since their king came to power, but already the evil that corrupted his heart was beginning to lay claim over the castle courtyard. "Rise!" the king commanded, his voice menacing. Trembling, the peasant slowly stood, looking into his lord's eyes. Any hope of forgiveness was vanquished the moment he stared into his soulless orbs. The king smashed the back of his hand against the peasant's face, his bejeweled fingers scoring deeply against the flesh. The peasant reeled momentarily and kept his position. "Please, my lord," he whispered. "Please, I've done my best." "You have done nothing but fail," the king snapped. "Your time here is over. Guard!" The man on the left snapped to attention and saluted the king. "Take him to the Stark Pit!" the king commanded. The guard paled, but he saluted again and dragged the stunned peasant away. The king swept around and walked back to his throne, settling himself imperiously upon it. He glared majestically down at his court. Not one of them managed to suppress a shudder as eyes swept over them. Seeing them flinch, the king grinned to himself. As it should be, he thought. "What news of the war?" he asked casually. "My lord," one man said, stepping forwards. "I bring news from the north. Cameron Castle was successfully defended by the Kento forces." "Damn them!" the king gritted, smashing a fist under his chair arm. "The Goto army and the Kento forces both surrendered to each other. The word is that a Ho-Oh passed over the battle, spreading a light as it passed that prevented both armies from continuing." "Ho-Oh!" the king roared, leaping from his seat. He strode forwards, grabbing the hapless man by the neck of his tunic. "Are you sure that it was Ho-Oh?" "My lord, I can only report what others... Was it a Ho-Oh, or wasn't it?" the king shrieked. "It was, my lord," the man gasped. The king dropped the man and paced angrily across the room, muttering darkly to himself. "Ho-Oh again. Always appears to destroy my plans. The moment they are about to come to fruition. No, this is the last straw. I will not take this anymore!" He whirled, and the court fell back as they felt his evil spirit begin to flow across them. "I want Ho-Oh found and captured," he ordered. "Bring it back here, and we shall see just how powerful it is. Ho-Oh will regret the day it crossed the king of Pokelantis."
Years later.
Paul peered through the thick brush of Petalbrick Forest, trying to spot a sign of his quarry. "Come here, Celebi," he hissed quietly as he spotted a shadow moving slowly along the forest floor. He smiled as he realized that there was no Pokemon on the ground. This could be either a flying type or a Celebi. Without taking his eyes off the shadow, he reached down to his belt and drew out a ball. "Paul, just what's the big idea?" James demanded as it came crashing through the underbrush. "I asked you if we could have a quick break 5 minutes ago, and you said no, but now you're just sitting in the bushes. Idiot!" Paul roared as he bolted towards the shadow. Whee! Sorry, listen, I didn't see the dialogue tag and fine. I'm sorry. Whee! The surprised wheezing moaned as it turned to see the angry Paul charging right at it, with James following close behind. The moment that he caught a glimpse of the Pokemon, Paul threw the ball in reflex. It smashed into the wheezing, enveloping the poison type in red light. The light shattered and the ball rolled away, coming to rest at Paul's feet. Paul looked down at the Pokeball, feeling simultaneously furious and relieved. Furious that he had accidentally grabbed a regular Pokeball instead of a Dark Ball, and relieved that he hadn't wasted his only Dark Ball in the wheezing. He snorted as he stopped and picked up the Pokeball, looking at the wheezing in distaste. "Only a wheezing. What a waste," he muttered, turning away. "Come on, James." "Sure," James said, following Paul slowly but looking over his shoulder at the Pokemon. Me and the mango? I'm a mochi, not a mango. But maybe I'm a mango-flavored mochi. I don't know. That's up to you. That's up for people to decide, I guess, if they want to taste out of me. Just ignore me. How are you doing, Cosmetic? How are you doing? Nice to see you around. "Wheezing way!" the Pokemon called, floating after them. James stopped moving and Paul turned in frustration. He was stunned at what he saw. The wheezing had approached James and actually appeared to be trying to hug him with its gaseous body, tears streaming from its 4 eyes.
I don't believe it,
James whispered. James, move it! Paul repeated impatiently. The blue-haired trainer didn't seem to hear. Gritting his teeth in frustration, Paul walked over and grabbed James by the arm. Leave it! You saw what happened. My Pokeball bounced right off. It belongs to someone else and can't be captured. My father may be the head of Team Rocket, but I don't see other people's Pokemon. Now go! We have a Celebi to catch. But... James began. Paul's temper snapped. But nothing! He roared, spraying James with Lexus spit. It can't be captured. You want to see the Pokeball fail again? Watch! He snatched a random Pokeball from James's belt and threw it hard at the wheezing. The ball made contact and a red glow spread over the poison type. The wheezing was called inside and the ball bounced back to James. Paul stood rooted. What just happened? Wheezing, James whispered, his eyes shining. Wheezing, it is you! I look mango. Okay, well, I am colored orange, true. I look like a mango with the skin peeled off. You know what? Fair enough. I guess that is fair. Possibly, a little bit. But aren't mangoes more like oblong? Your feelings good? That's good. That's good. I hope you're having a good Monday night. Or whatever your, whatever your time zone. I hope you're having a good time zone. Yeah, we're just reading Final Challenge by Matkin22. We're chapter 20, Recapture, which, hey, by the way, I think I'm starting to realize why this chapter is called Recapture, don't you think? For, more than one reason. Anyway. Oi, ready for the conference, Ash? Greta asked with a grin. No, Ash replied, rolling his eyes. Hey, don't let Tucker hear that. He'll try to answer every question himself. Greta laughed. I wouldn't mind that. Oh, I doubt that very much, Cynthia said calmly, striding towards them. Cynthia! Ash yelled in surprise. Good to see you too, Cynthia said with a grin herself. Now look, I know that you really don't want to do this interview, but the press won't leave you alone until you do it. At least here the Frontier Brains and I will be able to do it with you. She's right! She's right, Greta agreed. Come on, the press is waiting. Where are the other brains? Ash asked. They're already in the conference room, Cynthia answered. All of your traveling companions are with the public behind the press. I guess we should go then, huh? Ash asked, looking at Pikachu, who was perched on his shoulder as usual. Take off, Pikachu agreed, nodding his head. Cynthia smiled at the pair and then moved to the side to let Greta through. The champion followed the arena tycoon, and Ash fell in step behind them. He blinked as dozens of bright lights suddenly flashed in front of him, and the accompanying clamor of voices trying to make themselves heard made his ears hurt. He turned his head away slightly and followed Cynthia to his chair. He sat down with Cynthia on his left, and he looked to see Annabelle on his right. Good to see you again, Ash, Annabelle smiled, patting his arm. I heard about that battle in the She was interrupted by a relative flurry of flashes. Ash groaned inwardly as he saw the reporters in the very front row pushing forwards, taking seemingly endless amounts of pictures, and all trying to make their question the one that was heard. Just behind them, Ash saw the second row of reporters shaking their heads disapprovingly at the one in front. Paparazzi, lowest of the low. Ash lip-read one of them muttering as they looked down at their notes. Ketchum, what is your relationship with Salon Maid and Annabelle? One of the paparazzi yelled. Mr. Ketchum, how long has this been going on? Another shouted. Mr. Ketchum, Mr. Ketchum! More clamored. Ash sat there dumbfounded. Annabelle clearly embarrassed, neither of them knowing what to do or say. Chew! Pikachu roared. A massive burst of electricity erupted skywards where it hit the roof and dissipated. The paparazzi were silenced immediately. Yes, well, Brandon coughed, leaning into his microphone. This conference has been called to deal with any and all questions that the press has regarding the events of the battle that was interrupted, and only this event. He glared at the paparazzi, and even the most defiant were cowed, although several still wrote quickly in their notebooks. Ash and Cynthia will answer any questions that you will direct towards them, as shall the Frontier Brains. At the conclusion of this conference, neither Ash, Cynthia, nor any other involved party expects to be questioned about any matter any further. Now, without further ado, I would like to call forwards our moderator, for lack of a better term. Domace Tucker, if you please. Thank you, Brandon. Tucker grinned as he leapt forwards. He paused for emphasis, and the audience leaned in expectantly. Any questions? He asked, and the audience sagged with disappointment, having expected him to make some sort of shocking and sweeping statement. Mr. Ketchum, we all saw your first few Pokemon choices. What others had you selected for the battle? One woman asked, taking advantage of the lull. That's not something I can answer, Ash said. I'm sure you can understand, since my opponent is sitting next to me. When we schedule a rematch, you'll see what they were. And thank you for the follow, Onyx Fury. I appreciate you. Welcome aboard. Hi, hi, hi. How are you? How are you doing? Do you plan on using the same Pokemon? A man asked. That depends on how we do the battle, Ash answered. If it's a fresh start, then probably not. If we just go from where we left off when we were interrupted, then yes, I will use the same Pokemon. Roses are red, violets are blue. If roses look like violets, I would be concerned too. That's a good one. I like that. Never heard that one before. Oh, Big Mochi Bot should take notes. Yeah, it is a funny poem. I do like that quite a bit. Cynthia, same question? The man asked. My answer is the same as Ash's, Cynthia responded. What's your opinion on how you're faring in the battle? A woman asked Cynthia, who shrugged. Every battle creates different situations, she said evasively. Ash certainly had the upper hand at one point, but several of his Pokemon had been badly hurt. I don't want to sound vain, but it probably wouldn't have taken much effort from a fresh Pokemon to knock out each of those out to even the battle score. Ash, what will happen to the Battle Coliseum? Another woman asked. As a Frontier Brain, I really hope that it will be rebuilt, Ash answered. I'd like it if the rematch could be held there too, but that all depends on how quickly it gets rebuilt. Vera Beauty was the one who walked in flower fields during the spring. She walked and danced without shoes, for she wanted to feel the energy of life that came from the ground. Hair as black as night, skin as soft as a primrose, and eyes as blue as the sky. Nothing could dampen the spirit of the one I can only call the angel of life. You're a freehand poet. Did you write that all at the top of your head? I like that. That's impressive. That's impressive. Man, if only it could take me, like... If only it didn't take me, like, 45 minutes to write one paragraph. Sometimes it takes me, like, 45 minutes to write even 2 sentences. But write poetry since you were 13 years old? Nice! That is good stuff. I do like that a lot. Alright, anyway. Where was I here? Here. What are you gonna do in the meantime? A newspaper reporter asked. I'll be training with my Pokemon in the field, Ash answered. Where? One paparazzi demanded. Ash eyed him. Anywhere that isn't close to a member of the paparazzi, he said coldly. Several newspaper and television reporters laughed appreciatively. What's your relationship with Annabelle? The paparazzi pressed. This is not relevant to the conference, Lucy interjected. It's relevant if I say it is, the paparazzi snapped insolently. Well, he demanded aggressively. Without bothering to respond, Ash lightly threw 2 Pokeballs into the air. In twin bursts of light, Gallade appeared alongside a tall simian that was wreathed in flames and appeared to be dressed in war paint. Infernape. Without waiting for a command from Ash, they both headed towards the paparazzi member, grabbed him by the arms, and dragged the struggling busybody from the tent. Any more questions? Ash asked calmly. Paul gritted his teeth and threw his Poketch to the ground in fury. That pompous, arrogant son of a... he ranted. James watched in surprise. Moments ago, Paul had gotten a call from his father. James ducked out of the video's screen sight as precaution. Paul had spoken briefly and then tuned into a wireless TV channel that was broadcasting the Twerp's press conference live. Watching it, James thought that the Twerp had handled himself maturely. Apparently, Paul thought differently. What's the big deal about the twerp? James asked. Why do you hate him so much? Because he's weak! Paul shouted angrily. Someone like him should never have gotten where he is today. I beat him every time we ever battled. Every time! And then he manages to beat me once and the press are all over him and he's hailed as some sort of master. He roared and smashed his fist into a nearby tree angrily. Dislodged by the impact, a light green stone fell from the branches and landed at his feet. What's that? James asked curiously as he looked at the stone, noticing that it was a perfect rectangle. I don't know, Paul answered as he stared down at it. The stone was fairly large, about 2 feet long and over an inch thick. He reached down and picked it up, wiping off some moss that had grown over the surface. The right bearer of a plate draws from the plate it holds, he read aloud. He snorted and dropped it, trudging off again. Come on, James, he said. Still got a Celebi to find and catch. James hesitated for a moment before picking up the plate. He was surprised at how light it was, considering its size. He tucked it under his shirt and ran off after Paul. Okay, so quite a few things in this chapter. James got his wheezing back. Ash holding a press conference. Paul and James got a play, and we saw a flashback to 400 years prior, where the King of Pokéatlantis makes an appearance. Yeah, you remember that guy? Remember that guy? He possessed Ash that one time? I think. Remember? You remember? I'm gonna be real with you. I think most of my exposure to that episode was through a YouTube poop that I think is probably gone from the internet, which makes me sad. Because you basically had Dr. Robotnik as Brandon, and it was like, well, you had Eggman as, for the Sonic cartoon. Like, for some reason he took Brandon's place there. Who knows why? I don't know. I mean, it was funny though. Anyway, what am I doing? I probably sound like a crazy person here. Okay. Okay, I think I know where we can end this. Oh boy, I think I know a good chapter where we can end this. Oh boy. It's this one, by the way. It's this one. Oh boy. Wow. Can't believe it. We're 21 chapters into this, and we're just now getting the one that's called beginning. What have the other 20 chapters been? What have the other 20 chapters been then? You know what I mean? I don't know. What the hecky heck? Oy. Okay. All right, let's see here. Okay. Let me get the stuff ready. All right. Chapter 21, beginning. His eyes snapped open. They roved around the room, taking in the clean stainless steel surfaces and the comfy beds of varying sizes. He sniffed in the air, trepidation, and smelled disinfectant. Pokemon Center, he realized. He sat up and swooned almost immediately as waves of dizziness and nausea crashed through his brain. Ah, he moaned as ripples of pain shot through his body. So, you're finally awake, he heard a voice say. He turned and saw who had spoken. A trainer dressed in the most ludicrous green outfit he had ever seen. How long have I been out? He asked the trainer. Oh, wait, hold up. I'm dumb. Hold on. I know who this is. I forgot who this is. I need to do it right. What am I doing? How long have I been out? He asked the trainer. The trainer jerked back in surprise. You can talk! Wow, I can't believe it. A talking Meowth! Meowth glared at the trainer.
Hey, maybe I can talk, but that don't mean I'll like being ignored. Who are you and how'd I get here?
My name's Richie, the trainer answered. I was walking through Viridian Forest when I found you. You were out cold and really badly hurt. You were alone, so I thought maybe a hero had attacked you or something and your pack had abandoned you. The only way I could get you here on time was by capturing you. Meow's eyes widened in horror.
You caught me?
He asked faintly. Richie nodded. Yeah, and my Tyranitar brought you here.
No way, no, I ain't no Pokeball Pokemon.
Meow snapped.
You gotta let me go.
Let you go? Richie asked, completely taken aback. Why would I do that? You'd be a great member of my team. Maybe you'll even evolve into a Persian.
I ain't ever evolving.
Meow shrieked. He burst down into tears.
Well, Jesse and James do without me. I can't be a Pokeball Pokemon. I can't.
Jesse and James? Richie asked slowly, screwing up his face in concentration. Wait, I remember some of those names. They were from Team Rocket and tried to capture our Lugia, and his voice trailed off, and he looked at Meowth with a hard expression. And they had a talking Meowth, finished.
That would be me.
Meowth flared back.
We didn't even want that Lugia. We just didn't want Cassie and Botch to steal it first.
Well, that settles it, Richie declared. There's no way that I'm going to release you. Not until I teach you how to be good, anyways.
That's inhuman!
Meowth shouted angrily. Good thing you're a Pokemon, then, Richie said bluntly, raising a Pokeball.
Don't you dare!
Meowth warned. Meowth, return! Richie commanded, pressing the button in the center. A red beam of light shot out from the ball and collided with Meowth. He screamed as the paralyzing effects of the beam enveloped him, and he was drawn back into the Pokeball. Richie lowered his arm and stared at the Pokeball caught in his hand. He felt sick inside, and his heart was pounding. He delicately lowered himself into a nearby chair, never once taking his eyes off of Meowth's ball. What have I done, he wondered. Is this why Cruz refuses to listen to me? Why it attacked me? What right do I have to be a creature captive that wants to be free? He shuddered, but placed the Pokeball on his belt. Even though Meowth clearly didn't want to be a part of his team, he would work with Pokemon until he came to accept Richie as his trainer. He knew that all those years in Team Rocket must have corrupted the Pokemon somehow, but he felt confident that he could reach the good in its heart. He'd start in Pewter City. Ash stepped outside of the conference building, took several deep breaths. He felt distinctly glad that he'd asked Gallade and Infernape to remove anybody who was causing a problem at the conference. But he felt a little shamed, too. Did he really have to resort to using his Pokemon as bodyguards? Ash? He heard someone ask. He turned and saw Annabelle standing at the doorway uncertainly. Oh, hey Annabelle, he said. Man, those paparazzi really get annoying, huh? Tell me about it, Annabelle said, shaking her head ruefully. It didn't stop when the conference ended either. All the paparazzi surrounded me the second that you left and started asking me the most ridiculous questions you could answer. Ash shook his head in disgust. I guess some people have nothing better to do than spend lives about other people's lives, he said bitterly. All my life I've wanted to be a Pokemon master. Caught, trained, and become friends with my Pokemon, all just to follow my dreams. He gestured back in the direction of the conference room. My dream never involved that. There are always a few hurdles in our paths, Annabelle said. Being a Frontier Brain doesn't get you as much publicity as a league champion, or even a gym leader if you consider one, but there's enough of it to make your life stressful. We all handle it in different ways. Tucker can't get enough of media attention. That's why he asked Scott to build the Battle Dome in the city. But on the other hand, there's me, and I just can't stand the publicity. That's why I built the battle tower as far into the wilderness as you can get. You prefer the wild to civilization? Ash asked mischievously. Annabelle smiled impishly. Maybe, but I'm not a total outcast. Just real quiet in the forest. I hear that, Ash said quietly. He looked around at the sight of Viridian City in distaste. The air seemed to cling to the skin and felt gritty, not fresh. Several pieces of litter dotted the area. As he watched, a passing teenager threw a half-empty water bottle carelessly at a garbage can. It clanged off the side and rolled into a halt at Ash's feet. He watched as the clear liquid seeped onto the pavement and turned a deep shade of brown as it collected all the grime stuck to the street. Give me a forest or a field any day, he muttered. Now that you've spoken to the press, where are you planning on going? Annabelle asked. Vermilion City, I think, Ash said. Rock's brother Forrest is there training at the moment, and I think that Ray wants to have a practice battle with him. After that, we can catch a Vermilion ferry to Canalave City in Sinnoh. How about you? Oh, I was just gonna head home to the battle tower, Annabelle said softly. Ash looked at her curiously. She seemed almost disappointed about something, but couldn't think why. You know, Annabelle began, Tojo Falls actually runs north to the ocean. There's a little port town up there that almost nobody has heard of, and it's a quick ferry ride from there to Canalave. It'll probably save you quite a bit of time since you won't have to circle Kanto, and it's really untamed wilderness up there with lots of strong wild Pokemon. Thanks, Annabelle, I said, but I think I'm still going to Vermilion City. Annabelle looked at him, crestfallen. Her heart pounded, but she didn't know what else she could say to try and change his mind. She would never admit it out loud, but she really did care about Ash in a deeper way than mere friendship. She knew that several people, including Brandon, probably half the planet, now the paparazzi had gotten involved, had guessed her feelings, but she did her best to keep them under wraps. Ash looked at her carefully. Although she had never said anything, he had long ago guessed her true feelings. He knew that she couldn't help it, and inwardly he admired her ability to hide how she felt. Of all the Frontier brains, Annabelle was the one he felt closest to. And maybe in an alternate timeline, he'd have felt something more for her than he did. More for her than he did, but he loved May. It had taken him several years to realize it, but now that he couldn't stop thinking about her. He wanted to be with her, not Annabelle. He knew that it would destroy Annabelle if he openly mentioned this to her, so he tried to keep some distance between them recently. Too much distance, he realized. I haven't spent any time with Annabelle for a couple months. I could blame all of that on the training, but that's no excuse to shun her. Heck, I've been with Scott more often than Annabelle, and he's been in Johto for 2 months now. He looked down at the ground uncomfortably. Annabelle spent a lot of time at the Battle Tower, but the Battle Frontier didn't exactly get a lot of challenges to fight its prestige. Most trainers were too obsessed with the more famous regional leagues to spend any time challenging other championships. She must get really lonely out there, he realized, and he felt even more ashamed. He knew that Annabelle considered him one of her closest friends, more so than any other Frontier brains. He also knew that it was probably all down to an age difference, since the other 5 Frontier brains were all at least 10 years older than Annabelle. It's more than that, he thought. I don't have any issues connecting with the other brains, but Annabelle does. He sighed. It was all down to personality. Where he was outgoing, she was introverted. She couldn't connect to the others because she was just too shy with the age difference. She doesn't have many friends, and one of the only ones that she does has been shunning her. I feel so angry with myself because of that. Keeping a safe distance is one thing. Ignoring altogether? He looked up at Annabelle. She was staring at a fixed point in the distance unblinkingly. He felt sure that she was holding back tears. Make her so happy if we just spent one night at the Battle Tower, he thought. Can't deny her that. Tell you what, he said, breaking the long silence. I'm still going to go to Vermilion City, for Brock's and Ray's sake. Plus, there's a friend there that I want to check in on, too. But I promise this. Once we're done in Vermilion City, we'll come right back and go to Tojo Falls. I just can't resist the chance to see all those wild Pokemon. Annabelle looked at him in surprise. Really? She asked. I can't miss the chance to spend some more time with my friends, can I? Ash said with a grin. Annabelle smiled back, and Ash realized just how long it had been since he had seen her so happy. Inside, he still felt terrible about his recent treatment towards her, but he was glad that he still had the chance to mend any damage he had done. At last! Paul shouted triumphantly, bursting from the shrubbery. The Celebi whirled in surprise. It eyed the lavender-haired trainer in puzzlement. Then its eyes fell on the black sphere in the trainer's hands. It widened. That ball was all too familiar to Celebi. It turned and made to escape, but Paul was ready.
Miss Magius, me look!
He shouted. The Mismagius emerged from the shadows. Celebi was flying straight for it, and had no chance to avoid looking in its eyes. Twin-pupiled purple orbs floated through the air from the Mismagius and sank into Celebi's eyes. The legendary Pokemon desperately tried to teleport away, but to no avail. Dark Ball, go! Paul barked, throwing the ball at Celebi. It screamed as the ball made contact and was sucked inside by a navy light. The ball rolled once and then clicked. Paul then did something very rare for him. He laughed. From the nearby bushes, James shuddered at the sound. He had never heard a laugh sound so cold-hearted and evil before. Still, he had to admit, Paul's strategy of sending out Mismagius ahead of time in anticipation of Celebi trying to escape had worked wonders. James! Paul barked, halting his laughter abruptly. Yes? James asked nervously, moving into the open. Paul's eyes coldly bored into him. We're finished here, he said. Time to go back to Rocket Headquarters. James paled. Will the boss let me live? He asked hesitantly. Who knows, Paul said, shrugging uncaringly. That's for him to decide. I'll put in a word for you, but to be honest, a couple days of work doesn't exactly make up for 10 years of incompetent. He paused as his Poketch vibrated in his pocket. Grimacing in annoyance, he fished it out and punched in a few buttons. Text message, he muttered as he read the screen. His eyes narrowed, and he stuffed the Poketch back into his pocket, along with the Dark Ball. Right, change of plan, he said, stretching his legs. We got a stop to make on the way back. Where? James asked. Azalea Town, Paul answered. He set off at a run through the forest. Sighing, James shifted his plate under his shirt so that it rested more comfortably against his stomach, and then followed Paul and under. So you're telling me that instead of traveling on a luxury cruise ship, we have to struggle through a heck of a lot of untamed wilderness, fighting off all these wild Pokemon? May asked, her arms crossed and her foot tapping the ground as she leaned against a wall. Yeah, that's pretty much it, Ash said from his bed with a nervous grin. And why exactly do we want to do that? She asked. Ash sighed and looked around the Pokemon Center bedroom where Brock, May, Ray, and he were staying and trying to come up with an answer. It's been a long time since I was in the field. I mean, actually out training where there aren't many people. I'm tired of being stuck near cities and being mobbed by the press and hundreds of fans. It won't be any different on the boat than it is here in Viridian. At least on the boat, you have a shower and a bed, they pointed out. Besides, what's wrong with training in the forest on the way to Vermilion? It's still too close to the city, Ash said. He paused and tried to think of the best way to word how he was feeling. It's not pure enough, he finished. Pure enough? They asked. What do you mean by that? Vermilion's only a day or two away from Viridian. The route's pretty busy, and you're never far away from all the city crime, even if you take Biglet's cave. I want to feel a clean breeze. I want to walk through forests, not parks. I want to see clear streams, not sewer lines. His voice had a pleading note in it, and May sighed relentingly. Okay then, Ash. It's fine by me if I go north through Tojo Falls. Then she smiled. I can understand how you feel. I love the city, but after spending so much time traveling, I just get urged to spend some time away from the cities too. Ash smiled back, giving her a quick hug. Thanks, May. There was a shattering sound, and Ash and May leapt back, their faces both scarlet. Dawn looked back at them, a broken glass of juice at her feet. Oops, she said, beginning to blush. Sorry, I'll just go over here now, she indicated, pointing in the direction of the lobby. Ash groaned and held his head, collapsing his back to his bed. Brilliant, he muttered. May giggled, and he turned to look at her in exasperation. What? He asked. Your face, she said, grinning. You look so embarrassed. I'm not surprised, he muttered. Now Dawn's going to think that there's something going on between us. Maybe there is, May said without thinking. Full 10 seconds of silence passed in which Ash and May just looked at each other. As she realized what she had said, May's cheeks began to resemble the shade of ripe tomatoes. She felt sure that somebody could have toasted bread on them if they wanted to at that moment. Do you really mean that, May? Ash asked quietly. Well, Yeah, I wouldn't have said it if I didn't, Ash, she responded. Oh, it's kind of awkward, he said after another brief silence. May knelt down next to him and looked at him in the eyes. Only if you make it that way, she said quietly. Ash gazed into her eyes, losing himself in the deep sapphire pools that radiated light, joy, compassion, love. He didn't know how it started or who began it, but when he regained some semblance of organized thought, he realized that he and May were locked together in a tight embrace, with their eyes closed, their lips glued together, and their tongues on fire.
And that is the end of things for today.
Oh,
Yeah, we're ending it on an advanced shipping note. Oh, isn't it great, y'all? Oh, I love it. I love it so much. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. I flippin' love it, man. It's so cute. And like, I was just like, hey, yeah, maybe there is something between us. Yeah, she's so forward with that, man. That takes guts, man. That takes guts. That really takes guts. But as that is the end, let's go out and raid. Oh my god. Okay, I know I did this last week. I know we did this last week. Oh. I'm glad. Okay, I know we did this last week, but okay, I gotta do it again. I gotta do it again. Ariel is doing 100 line again. Got a raider. We got a raider. Got a raider again. Freaking 100 line, man. Gotta do it. Just gotta do it. Crazy. I think she's doing the comedy row now, or she did when she started. Oh, okay. Yeah, there's no way she's still doing it. She's 11 hours and 20 minutes in. What is going on here? This is a really long stream. Holy cow. I can only imagine she's gonna be ending soon. Let's raid her before she does. But yeah, so thanks for listening to some more Final Challenge, everybody. And next time we'll be doing some more Pokemon Legends ZA with Thunder and the gang. So I'll see you then. And next Monday we'll, if I'm not doing anything, I don't remember if I have anything then. But if my next Monday's free, we'll do some more. We'll be continuing part 3 of Final Challenge. Things are starting to heat up a little bit. We're starting to get some world building, and things are happening, man. More stuff's gonna be happening soon. I'll tell you that much. So yeah, let's say hi to Ariel, and have a great rest of your night, everybody. Take care.